Chapter 621. Fuck you, Danzo. Fujin waved his hand dismissively, shooing the three of them away like they were pests. It annoyed the three of them once again, but Gaara surprisingly didn't lose his control once again. He just stared at Fujin as the three of them left the room. As soon as the trio exited, the expression of all four Konoha ninjas became serious. Hoka activated his Byakugan. Anko muttered, "Such strong bloodlust. No wonder you found them suspicious. It's surprising to see that the Kazekage trained his youngest son to be such a ninja." Hoka agreed. "Yeah, I thought that he would attack us for sure due to the bloodlust he was oozing. Still, his chakra network seems very weird." "I haven't seen anything like that," Renjiro chipped in. "Knowing how lousy Suna's seal for sealing their tailed beast is, it's no wonder that the boy's chakra network is a mess and his bloodlust is so strong." Anko and Hoka were shocked. Anko exclaimed, "A tailed beast?" Hoka asked. "You mean that he is a Jinchuriki?" Unlike Renjiro, who knew about it thanks to his connections and rank, Hoka and Anko weren't aware that Gaara was the Jinchuriki. Both knew how terrifying the tailed beasts were and immediately became tense. Renjiro nodded and said, "Yeah, I guess that's why you called them here and taunted them, right?" Fujin nodded and answered, "More or less. I was active in Sunagakuyor during my Anbu days and even saw him once. From the intel I collected, he was extremely unstable and frequently lost control of the tailed beast inside him. I wanted to make sure that he wouldn't lose control easily. Otherwise, he could cause a catastrophe inside the village. From the restraint he displayed, it seems like he has gotten better control of his emotions and might not be that big of a threat. Regardless, his appearance in the Chunin exam is very suspicious. Normally, no village allows their Jinchuriki to even go out of the village. The fact that Orochimaru made a move makes it even more fishy. But wouldn't it be dangerous if he lost control here? You're low on chakra and I'm not sure if we three would be able to defeat a tailed beast," Anko exclaimed anxiously. Fujin casually replied, "It's fine. I inscribed a few seals on the tower when I learnt that he would be participating. As long as he loses control inside the tower, I can suppress and capture him." Hoka nervously asked, "A few seals? Would that be enough?" Anko agreed with him. "Yes, don't underestimate the tailed beasts. A few seals wouldn't be sufficient to deal with them. Don't forget that Lord Fourth died while sealing the 9 tails." Only Renjiro looked at Fujin with a weird expression and thought, "A few seals? Does he even understand what a few means? His few should be a few thousand for a normal person, right?" That said, I didn't sense any seals. It looks like his Fuinjutsu has gotten better. As Renjiro expected, Fujin replied, "Don't worry, I can stop him. Just don't rush towards him and let me handle it in case he truly lets the tailed beast loose." Hoka, Renjiro, and Anko nodded in agreement. None of the three wanted to fight a tailed beast. Anko said, "We should report this information to Lord Hokage." To her surprise, Fujin shook his head and said, "Don't look down on him. He couldn't have guessed that Orochimaru would show up, but he should know all about that kid." Anko calmed down on hearing that. Fujin's words made sense. However, she couldn't help but wonder, what is Lord Hokage thinking by allowing someone so dangerous to take the Chunin exam? After they left the room and got a sufficient distance away, Kankuro couldn't hold it in anymore and cursed. "That guy is so fucking arrogant. He acts like he is some sort of senior to us when he is barely older than us." Temari agreed and said, "Yes, he's full of himself. I wanted to ask him about the wind jutsus, but he just kept on humiliating us. That said, I'm not sure whether he is that arrogant or whether he was purposefully taunting us." Her words surprised Kankuro and Gaara. Both immediately understood that Fujin might have been suspecting them and trying to get a reaction from them. Kankuro immediately looked at Gaara and thought, "This is trouble. Do those old geezers really have a good plan?" Temari continued, "Anyway, there is nothing we can do about it. Let's just stay here quietly for the next 5 days. Once Baki-sensei arrives, we can ask him." Kankuro nodded and calmed down. After all, they were deep in enemy territory. He didn't want to attract too much attention, especially when someone who could force Orochimaru away was present. While Fujin met the Suna trio, Hiruzen reached his office. He immediately dispatched a few clones and assembled the same Anbu squads that he had tasked to improve Fujin's reputation and ruin Katsuhiro's reputation after the proposal for the guidance hall was passed successfully. He gave them a new mission, which was to spread the news of Fujin defeating Orochimaru. In a couple of hours, a good chunk of Konoha's population learned about the fight between Fujin and Orochimaru. The veteran ninjas were shocked. They knew how terrifying Orochimaru was. They quickly asked the ones in power whether it was true. A few even approached Hiruzen. After confirming it, they immediately broke into celebrations. As for the younger ninjas and the civilians, they weren't aware of how big of an achievement it was. However, just knowing that Konoha had another rank S ninja was enough for them to be happy. Of course, there was one person who wasn't happy. On the contrary, he was terrified. Sitting inside his home, Katsuhiro was covered in sweat. A terrified expression could be seen on Katsuhiro's face. His body was involuntarily shivering at irregular intervals. He muttered, "Fujin defeated Orochimaru, and he forced him to retreat." Unlike others who found the news hard to believe, he didn't want to believe it. Terror flooded his mind, and for a long time he couldn't even think properly. His blood pressure, which had come down to manageable levels, went haywire once again. Nearly half an hour later, he managed to gather himself and analyzed. He couldn't have gotten so strong out of nowhere, meaning that he was always that strong. Even if he wasn't this strong, he would definitely have been a formidable rank S ninja when I went to him with the proposal. As he realized it, one word escaped his mouth: fuck. Katsuhiro shivered in rage and fear when recalling his exchanges with Fujin. When Fujin kept him waiting for nearly a couple of months, he badly wanted to rush into Fujin's house and teach him a lesson. The only reason that he didn't do so was that anyone so impulsive would never be selected for the council. When Fujin continued belittling him, it had taken a great amount of willpower for him to control himself. However, he was glad that he managed to control his impulses. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been alive. He cursed, "Fuck you, Danzo. You sent me to compete against someone who was as strong as fucking Orochimaru. What the fuck did I do to offend you? Yahoo, Yahoo bastard. I will never forget this scheme of yours. I nearly died so many times. Thankfully, I controlled myself, else that demonic brat would have even swallowed up my bones." From wanting to rip Fujin into pieces, Katsuhiro began wanting to dismember Danzo. All his resentment towards Fujin disappeared and was transferred to Danzo. In fact, if Danzo hadn't been protected by Root, he would have definitely gone there to vent his frustrations. Unknowingly, he was saved by those Root ninjas. In the Forest of Death, things calmed down. Kurenai's team managed to reach the tower on day one as well. Things didn't happen much differently than in the canon, other than the fact that the genins were far more alert. Sakura planted several traps and stayed on guard to protect Naruto and Sasuke. Meanwhile, the Oto squad searched for them following Orochimaru's orders. The next morning, the Oto squad attacked her. What they didn't know was that their actions were closely watched by a pair of eyes. With nearly a day's rest, Fujin had recovered most of his chakra. He sent a clone with 5% of his chakra to keep an eye on Naruto and Sasuke. The reason for the same was to guard against any unexpected moves from Orochimaru due to Fujin's existence. However, this wasn't the only clone Fujin had sent. There was another shadow clone who was at a different location in the Forest of Death. That clone had 25% of Fujin's chakra, 5 times more than the clone watching over Naruto and Sasuke. He was keeping an eye on 3 unsuspecting genins. Chapter 622, A New Home. Among the genin squads Kusagakyur sent to participate in the Chunin exam, only 2 managed to qualify for the second round. Unfortunately for Kusagakyur, one of them was the disguised Orochimaru's squad, and the second squad was being watched like a hawk by Fujin's clone. The second squad was planning what to do to get the other scroll. After planning for a bit, the two boys decided that they would go together to find other squads. They bit Karin's forearm to recover their chakra and left her alone in the deadly forest. Fujin's clone watched the scene and analyzed, from what I remember, she was attacked by a bear before being saved by Sasuke. However, Sasuke is injured right now. Those events probably happened on the third or the fourth day. It looks like these two leave her like this daily. So I suppose that no one will attack her today, He activated his space-time sensing technique. As he guessed, there wasn't anyone nearby to threaten her. He muttered to himself, oh well, I'll have to wait for a natural event. Alone in the deadly forest, Karin couldn't help but feel fear. She thought, what should I do if someone finds and attacks me? What if I get attacked by dangerous wild animals? Or what if those awful chakras reappear? I need to hide. Karin quickly began to look for a place to hide in. After searching for a bit, she found a large tree with a hole in its trunk at the base. She quickly entered inside and hid in it, making her feel safer. She closed her eyes and waited patiently for her teammates to return. It had only been around half an hour when she suddenly sensed some tremors. She opened her eyes and activated her chakra field while wondering, who is it? As she sensed, her eyes widened. She quickly jumped out of the tree. Half a second later, a large paw hit the tree and destroyed it. Karin looked at the figure in fear and muttered, "A lion? How did it find me?" In front of her was a 5-meter-tall lion. It stared at her ferociously, fully displaying its hunger. Karin immediately threw a few shurikens at it, but her shurikens couldn't pierce through its thick hide and only left a few scratches. Even though the lion wasn't injured, the scratches annoyed it and it rushed towards Karin. While Karin was being attacked by the lion, Yamanaka Fumito passed very close to that place. He was on patrol and had his chakra field active in order to sense any suspicious activities. While he wasn't the best sensor by any means, he was a very good one. Yet, despite being only 50 meters away from Karin and the lion, Fumito couldn't sense either of them. In fact, even Karin failed to sense him. It was as if she was in an alternate dimension where no one could detect her. If either of them knew that they were just 50 meters from each other, they would be shocked. As for the reason why they couldn't sense each other, it was quite simple. In order to not be disturbed, Fujin's clone had used the stealth battlefield that he had developed a few months ago. Unless a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster were to arrive, no one would be able to sense its existence. As the lion charged at Karin, she threw a few more kunai and shuriken while attempting to run. Unfortunately, her weapons barely affected the wild beast, and her speed was much slower than it. As his paw came crashing down on her, she jumped out of its way, barely dodging it. However, there was no relief on her face as another paw slapped her like a fly and sent her crashing into a tree. The impact injured her back and arms, making her unable to move for some time. She opened her eyes and saw the ferocious beast running towards her. A few teardrops ran down her cheeks as she thought, "Am I going to die here?" The memories of her dead mother appeared in her mind as she tried her best to get up. She barely managed to stand up by the time the lion reached her. However, she knew that it was too late. She resigned to her fate when she suddenly heard a crackling sound. A flash of light appeared in her eyes as a lightning spear hit the lion. The lightning spear hit the left side of its neck and electrocuted it. It made the lion move to its right and barely avoided hitting Karin. It crashed into another tree and fell unconscious due to the electric shocks. Karin was surprised by the sudden change. She immediately felt relief as she was still alive. However, she quickly became vigilant and watched from where the lightning had appeared. Her eyes quickly found a masked ninja wearing a black cloak and sitting on a branch. His eyes were staring right at her. Before she could think what to say or do, that figure disappeared and appeared right in front of her in the blink of an eye and looked at her with curiosity. Karin could only think of one thing: fast. He is very fast. Karin had never seen anyone move like that. She couldn't even follow his movements. What surprised her the most was that she couldn't sense him even though he was standing right in front of her. It was as if he wasn't there. Realizing that the ninja in front of her was an expert, she quickly said, "Thank you for saving me, sir." Fujin's clone nonchalantly replied, "Oh, it was nothing. That said, you are a Uzumaki, right? Why are you wearing the Kusagakure headband? And why are you alone in this deadly forest?" His words surprised Karin. She wondered, how did he know that I'm an Uzumaki, and why is he asking me this? She quickly answered, "Yes, I'm from the Uzumaki clan. My mother and I migrated to Kusagakure a few years ago." Fujin's clone replied, Migrated to Kusagakure. That was an odd choice. Anyway, you didn't answer my second question." Karin became dejected on thinking about it and answered, "My teammates left me here and went to get another scroll for passing the Chunin exam." Fujin's clone thought for a bit and said, "That's rather irresponsible. You should look for good teammates. Anyway, is your mother still in Kusagakure?" Sadness appeared on Karin's face as the question brought back her saddest memories. She barely controlled her tears and answered, "My mother died." Fujin's clone immediately asked, "How?" Karin could sense that the masked person wasn't happy on hearing the news. It made her feel slightly better. She was about to answer but suddenly stopped, thinking, if I tell him, would he exploit my ability as well? As she thought about it, she realized, why does it matter? I'm already being used for my cursed ability. Seeing her silent, Fujin's clone asked, "Does it have anything to do with the bite marks on your arm?" Sadness could be heard in Fujin's voice as he spoke. It lowered Karin's guard considerably. Her eyes became wet as she answered, "My mother had the ability to heal others if they bit her. I have the same ability too. My village is at war. They bit my mother too many times and she passed away." As she spoke, she couldn't control her tears, and a few drops rolled down her cheeks. She quickly wiped them and controlled herself as much as she could. Fujin's clone stayed silent for a few seconds before releasing a long sigh. He muttered in a sorrowful tone, "A shinobi without a homeland is quite tragic. What happened to your mother is an unfortunate tragedy. If you continue living there, then you might share the same fate." Hearing his words, Karin shivered. What he said was her worst nightmare. She lost control of her tears once again. Fujin's clone placed his hand on her head and ruffled her hair gently to calm her down. He said, "You have a choice to make. Do you want to continue living in a place that killed your mother and is mistreating you? Or do you want to move to a place where people will value you for who you are? A place where you can change your destiny? A place where you can ensure that no one else suffers the tragedy that you and your mother did?" His words surprised her. She wondered, does such a place truly exist? Or, sadness appeared in her mind once again as she asked, "Does such a place truly exist? Or do you want me just for my ability?" Chapter 623, Karin's Death. "Does such a place truly exist? Or do you want me just for my ability?" Fujin's clone could feel the tiredness in Karin's voice as she asked that question. He could feel that she had grown to resent the power that she had. Knowing her past, he could understand her emotions. Fujin's clone shook his head and sighed. He stopped ruffling her hair and pointed his palm at her, confusing her. A green chakra appeared from his hand and entered Karin's body. It healed the injuries caused by the lion's slap and crashing into the tree. Even the bite marks on her forearms began fading away. Her chakra recovered as well. Karin was surprised by what she was experiencing. Fujin's clone said, "Though the ability to heal others by letting them bite you is quite remarkable, any medical ninja can do the same. Even transferring chakra isn't that difficult. So, I don't particularly care about your ability. What I do care about is whether you are willing to work hard to ensure that others don't suffer in the same way you did. So, are you interested?" His words surprised her once again. Realizing that she had an opportunity to escape her hell and find a new home, she couldn't help but break into tears as she answered, "Yes, thank you." Fujin's clone didn't disturb her this time and allowed her to let her emotions out. Karin took a couple of minutes to control herself. She said, "Even though I'm willing to follow you, I'm afraid that my village would make Konoha give me back." Fujin's clone asked in amusement, Who said you'll become one of Konoha's ninjas? He chuckled and continued. Even though Konoha isn't as bad as Kusagakure and they have many good medical ninjas, your life in Konoha wouldn't be much different than in Kusagakure. He didn't say the following words out loud. The only difference would be that, instead of being forced to let others bite you, you'll do that willingly and feel pride in sacrificing your life in the same way as your mother instead of resentment. Karin was surprised to hear his words. She wondered, where will he take me then? Fujin's clone continued, you'll be joining an organization I created to help the weak people who can't defend themselves against the bandits and the rogue ninjas. It is called the Phantom Haven Society. Karin was surprised once again. She thought, is there really such an organization? Fujin's clone could understand her thoughts from her expression and added, almost everyone in this world wishes for peace, yet almost no one does anything to bring about that peace. That is why we call such wishful thinking the phantom will. Every person in my organization believes in the phantom will. Unlike others who merely wish it, we will put it into action. That is the goal of our society. Perhaps someday we'll succeed and ensure that most of the people in this world live without the fear of being attacked, or perhaps we might fall trying. Regardless, it is the goal of our lives. Though I don't need your healing ability, I need your commitment to this goal if you want to come with me. Those words immediately created an impression on Karin's young and innocent mind. She began dreaming about such a future where no one would be forced like her and her mother. She quickly replied, I want such a world too. In a gentle tone, Fujin's clone said, good, I didn't make the wrong judgment, don't resist. I'll apply the Phantom Seal on you. It's the seal that every Phantom Haven member has. Karin nodded and didn't resist, allowing Fujin's clone to apply the seal on her. A smile appeared on the clone's lips as he thought, another promising ninja recruited. Making her rank S in 4 years shouldn't be an issue. She'll develop good managerial skills as well and could become the leader of this branch. It's a shame that Haku and Kimimaro were recruited long before I graduated. Otherwise, I'd have raised a fearsome team. Oh well, there are still other promising candidates, Fujin's clone said. I'll take you to the base now, but first we need to do something. We need to fake your death. Karin asked, why's that? Fujin's clone answered, if you go missing, Kusagakure will try to search for you. Since you will go missing in Konoha, they might also influence Konoha to search for you. Though they won't be able to find our base, they might spot you when you are outside the base for any reason. By faking your death, we'll avoid that headache. Karin understood and nodded. She asked, what should I do? Fujin asked, do you have another set of clothes and glasses? Karin nodded. Fujin said, good, change into them. Give me your current clothes, your headband, and your glasses. In addition, cut some of your hair and hand it to me. Give me a bit of your blood as well. Fujin's clone handed her a syringe to draw out her blood. Karin didn't expect such a command, but followed his words. She went slightly away from his sight and changed her clothes quickly after confirming with her chakra field that there was no one around her. After getting the items, Fujin's clone created another shadow clone and handed those things to him. The first shadow clone looked at Karin and said, relax, we'll reach our base soon. Karin was confused but soon very dizzy. Within seconds, she fell asleep. It was due to a genjutsu the clone cast with the help of the chakra he inserted into her body when he healed her. As a result, she didn't suspect anything. Fujin's clone picked her up and disappeared from the forest of death. The other clone immediately got to work with the items he had taken. During his time in the Anbu, Fujin had done things like these numerous times, so it wasn't anything new for him. Not to mention, he had a massive beast lying very close to help him out. The clone immediately got to work and began planting some evidence to make it seem like Karin died in the forest. He healed the lion and removed the traces of the lightning shocks it experienced earlier. Even though the lion was unconscious, it hadn't taken much damage as Fujin's clone intended to use him for this purpose. He woke the lion up and placed it under a genjutsu. The lion immediately saw Karin lying on the ground, jumped on her and began eating her. Of course, what he did in actuality was just rip her clothes, crush her glasses, send her headband flying and eat some of her clothes and hair before walking away. It left behind some bloodied clothes, hair, the shards of glasses and her headband, creating an excellent scene to explain her death. Of course, it wasn't the perfect scene by any means. He could have created a more convincing scene by planting her bones in the forest. However, he had no intention of maiming Karin. What he had planted was enough to dismiss anyone who raised suspicions. Fujin's clone inspected the evidence a couple of times before getting rid of all the seals he had used to create the stealth battlefield and dispelling himself. In the tower, Fujin received the memories of his clone and thought, so Karin has in the tower. Fujin received the memories of his clone and thought, so Karin has been successfully recruited. Good, everything went as planned. If things still happen as in canon, I wonder who Sasuke would recruit in his team now. He thought for a bit before concluding, it doesn't matter. Orochimaru should have several talented underlings for Sasuke to choose from. Itachi will still give up his life. So that battle won't have a different result. It'll be against Killer Bee that this move of mine might have some grave consequences for him. Fujin remembered Sasuke being injured critically by Bee. Without a healer like Karin, he couldn't say for sure whether Sasuke would get out alive or not. However, considering that he was Indra's reincarnation, Fujin doubted that he'd be killed that easily. Regardless, he had no reason to worry about it right now. While Fujin's other clone planted the evidence, Fujin's clone and Karin appeared around 100 kilometers away in the vast forests of the Land of Fire. They disappeared almost instantly before appearing another 100 kilometers away. In less than a minute, Fujin's clone teleported over a dozen times and carried Karin from Konoha to the Phantom Haven base in the Land of Rivers. He stayed slightly away from the base and laid Karin down while thinking, she might get suspicious if she learnt that we just reached here in the blink of an eye. I'll let her sleep for a few hours before waking her up. While Karin slept in the Land of Rivers, the shockwaves of the battle on the previous day were being felt in faraway places. Sitting in his chair, I loudly exclaimed, "What did you say?" Chapter 624, That Dumb Snake. In the rakeage office, I loudly exclaimed, "What did you say?" Mabui repeated calmly, "Our spies sent reports stating that Orochimaru interfered in Konoha's Chunin exams. Everyone in Konoha is saying that he was confronted and defeated by Suzuki Fujin, the spectral swordsman." I had a hard time believing what he heard. He asked, "How accurate is this information?" Mabui replied, "It's hard to say. None of the spies witnessed the battle. They only learnt about it as the information was rapidly spread throughout Konoha." I frowned and analyzed. Since the information spread so easily, it means that Konoha is actively spreading it. That should imply that they either couldn't keep this incident a secret or they just wanted to increase Suzuki Fujin's reputation. There are three possibilities. The first is that they are just making up lies to increase that boy's reputation for some reason. The second is that the fight did occur, but the information they are spreading isn't accurate. And the last possibility is that he truly defeated Orochimaru. Which of these three is it? A frown was visible on Ai's face as he analyzed the information. Mabui stayed silent and thought about it as well. Just like I, she was surprised as well. She thought, I knew that he was strong and expected him to give Darui a tough fight. However, if this news is true, then he could even be able to fight Raikage-sama. Considering his age, he is a terrible enemy to have. I analyzed, knowing Hiruzen, he won't falsely increase the reputation of a ninja without any good reason. He is smart enough to know that if he does that, it'll bite him later. I could understand if Konoha was facing a grave threat and he wanted to deter others, but no one has made any major moves recently. Not to mention, I already expected him to be close to Darui's strength. So it isn't as if he is promoting someone out of nowhere. However, could he really be at the same level as Orochimaru, a 16-year-old boy defeating a Sannin? His talent might be at the same level as Minato. If the reports are true, then even I might not be able to kill him. Since he specializes in wind release, I'll need to be on guard against any secret wind jutsus he might have. That said, one thing doesn't make much sense. How could he become so strong within a few years while staying in the background? There aren't even any wars for him to mature through them like how most from my generation did. As I analyzed, he realized that he was missing a lot of information. He looked at Mabui and asked, "Do we have any Jounin rank spies in Konoha?" Mabui shook her head and answered, "We don't, Reikage-sama. It is very difficult to maintain high-level spies in Konoha. We only have 3 at the Chunin rank and 8 at the Genin rank. The rest are civilians." I thought for a bit and said, "Send secret missions to the Chunin rank spies and ask them to inspect the place where Fujin and Orochimaru fought. It might give us a better idea about what happened. Also, send a message to all squads deployed to find and hunt Fujin. Ask them to be on standby. Until new orders are issued, no one will take any action against him. In the future, Darui won't be sent to deal with him. If we get an opportunity, I'll personally make a move." Knowing Hiruzen's nature, I predicted that even if Fujin wasn't at the same level as Orochimaru, he should be at the level to be able to survive in a fight against him. It increased the difficulty of killing Fujin to a great extent while making any such missions extremely risky. I saw no reason to waste the lives of Kumo ninjas meaninglessly. Mabui nodded and replied, "I'll get to it." She quickly got to work. While I and Mabui discussed Fujin, another Cage's office was quite tense. Anoki had received several reports as well. He summoned Kitsuchi and Roshi, who were reading those reports in his office with a grave expression on their faces. While Kumo was aware that Fujin was dangerous, Iwa had experienced his strength firsthand on more than one occasion. Kitsuchi sighed and said, "I shouldn't have missed that opportunity. He was already as strong as me back then, while being far more lethal on the battlefield. Now, we won't be able to kill him unless you fight him." Roshi nodded and added, "To be able to force Orochimaru to retreat. I didn't think he'd reach this level so quickly. If we fight again, I'm afraid our next battle might not end in the same way." Hearing them praising the enemy, Anoki became annoyed and said, "Don't jump to conclusions yet. We still don't know how accurate this information is. That old monkey is very good at confusing everyone else." Kitsuchi said, "That's true. However, considering that the plans we made for him are based on his strength 2 years ago, it's safe to say that they'll be more or less useless right now. If we try to kill him now, the only way would be to catch him off guard with the dust release or tailed beast bomb. If we can't, then we'll need to sacrifice thousands of ninjas and come up with a reason for him to stay and fight. That's too difficult and costly," Roshi added, "not to mention he's still only 16. If he continues growing stronger, then he might become as strong as the 3rd Hokage at his peak. That's a rather formidable enemy to have. Our younger generation doesn't have anyone who could go up against someone like that." A scowl formed on Anoki's face as he cursed. If only that damned Deidara brat didn't go rogue and join that cursed mercenary group. He looked at Kitsuchi and instructed, "Ensure that Kuritsuchi and Akatsuchi don't slack off in their training. Tell them about Fujin and bring out their competitive instincts. If Iwa has to stand tall for the next 50 years, both of them need to be formidable rank S ninjas." Kitsuchi nodded and said, "I'll focus on it immediately." Unlike the previous times they discussed Fujin, none of them discussed a plan to eliminate Fujin. Though it could still be done, the cost of attempting it in peacetime would be extremely high. To make matters worse, they couldn't guarantee any results even if Roshi and Anoki both participated in the fight. The 2 warring factions in the Land of Water also received the news. The 4th Mizukage ignored it, while the memories of the spectral swordsman flashed in the minds of his subordinates. In the rebel camp, Mei was reading the reports as well. A smile appeared on her face as she said, "What a splendid young man." Memories of her meeting with Fujin appeared in her mind. Ao and other leaders in the rebel camp discussed this news in a similar manner as I and Anoki. The only difference was that they weren't finding ways to eliminate him as they were already in an intense war. The minor villages received the information as well. In fact, they received it faster than the three great villages, as the sensei of their genins sent them the messages. Those villages had long suffered at the hands of the spectral swordsman and were already terrified of him. Fujin's reputation grew even more terrifying in their hearts, and they decided to bury all their complaints about his previous actions. Of course, the most tense among them was none other than Kusagakure. Ashikaga Hiroshi was still like a statue after he read the report. After a couple of minutes, he let out a sigh of relief and muttered, "It's a good thing that we didn't accept his bait back then. If we did, then I'm afraid that Kusagakure would have been history by now." The memories of nearly every Kusa higher up grabbing their weapons after Fujin gave them their third choice during the negotiation kept playing in his mind. Back then, Hiroshi thought that they might have been able to kill him at a great cost, and the only reason they didn't do so was that none of the higher-ups, including him, wanted to be a sacrifice for others. However, Hiroshi now understood that the danger was much greater than he envisioned. In the village hidden in rain, Konan and Nagato received the information as well. However, neither of them gave much importance to it. Both paid more attention to Orochimaru's movements than to Fujin's strength. However, there was one village that attached more importance to this news than even Konoha. The council of that village were sitting together and reading the reports sent by Baki with a grave expression on their face. After a few minutes of silence, Tejuro angrily exclaimed, "That dumb snake, he's ruining all our plans." Chapter 625, Sunagakure's Decision. "That dumb snake, he's ruining all our plans," Tejuro exclaimed angrily in the Suna Council. He continued, "For our plans to succeed, we had to catch Konoha off guard. However, that dumb snake has ruined it all. Now Konoha would be on their guard and we might not get an opening to make a move." Rage could be heard in his voice. Thankfully, Orochimaru couldn't hear his words. Otherwise, Hiruzen wouldn't need to worry about his backstabbing ally. No one opposed Tejuro's words. Ryusa said, "This move would have been understandable if he could get rid of that troublesome boy." However, not only did he fail, but he also roused the morale of Konoha ninjas and alerted their higher-ups. "Our plan will no longer be smooth," Goza added. "That said, it isn't all bad. This battle shows that we underestimated Suzuki Fujin to a large degree. If we had proceeded with our plan without knowing the threat he posed, we would have suffered heavily." Tejuro argued, "We would have still been able to handle him." If Orochimaru hadn't alerted Konoha by making this stupid move, Konoha wouldn't have smelled anything fishy and wouldn't have called back their Sanins. The preparations we made for Jiraiya could have been used against him. However, now we can be certain that Konoha would at least call back one of their Sanins. In fact, they will most likely call both of them, so we will need to make arrangements for the third Hokage, 2 Sanins, the Shinobi of Darkness, Copy Ninja, and this brat. This is impossible to do unless we can suddenly call upon a couple of rank S ninjas. The Suna Council went quiet. Everyone could feel the pressure. Their initial plans involved dealing with just Hiruzen quickly and causing some wide-scale destruction with Shukaku. Once they achieved these two goals, they would retreat before Konoha could reorganize their forces. However, due to just one move of Orochimaru, they would have to deal with 2 Sanins and realized that Konoha had another ninja at that level. So they needed to make plans for 3 Sanin-level ninjas. Even for experienced ninjas like them, it was too much to handle. Seeing that no one was saying anything, Manabu said, "Silence won't resolve this issue. We need to decide whether we would still make a move against Konoha during this Chunin exam. Or should we postpone our plans to some later time when Konoha drops their guard again?" Ryusa nodded and said, "Yes, that's right. We have no reason to hurry. What is more important is our chances of success. If we can't deal with them, then we should stay patient and postpone our plans. Once the Sanins leave Konoha, we could create circumstances that would force Konoha to dispatch the copy ninja and the spectral swordsman to separate missions. Once they are away, we may have some opportunities to make a move against the Hokage. For the first time, Rasa spoke. That isn't necessarily correct. The longer we wait, the greater the possibility of Konoha getting a hint of our plans. Don't forget the incident in Yamakawa town. Even though Konoha wasn't behind it, they have become very active in the land of rivers after that incident. If they discover some of our movements, they will forever be on guard against us, and we won't have any opportunity until the next great ninja war breaks out. Not to mention, attacking the entire Konoha is too difficult. I'll need to meet with Hiruzen face to face like in the Chunin exam to have any chance of killing him. Arranging such a meeting at the same time when everyone is outside Konoha will be difficult. Goza agreed. That's right, this was our best chance. Even if we wait for the next Chunin exam, we won't be able to send Gaara. However, if we still continue with the current plan, do we have any shot at victory, Kazekage-sama? Orochimaru couldn't even deal with Suzuki Fujin. And if you two don't attack the third Hokage together, then killing him in a short time will be very difficult. Instead of outnumbering the Hokage, you and Orochimaru might get outnumbered. And unlike the Konoha ninjas who would trust each other, we can't trust that snake. Goza's expression was grim as he said those words. Rasa's expression was ugly as well. The situation was just too bad for Sunagakure. Their finances were in shambles. Their money had almost dried up, and they were only able to sustain themselves because Rasa was mining gold from the desert using his Kekkei Genkai. For a sitting Kage to do something like that was extremely humiliating. If it was leaked, Suna would become a laughing stock. Internally, their country was still unstable due to the mess Fujin had created years ago. The entire eastern half of the Land of Wind hated Rasa. Even in the other half, most of the civilians hated him. The Wind Daimyo gave more missions to Konoha than to Suna, and these were just a few of the problems they were facing. As a result, they needed a massive victory in order to turn their fortunes around. If they could kill Hiruzen and cause a massive amount of destruction in Konoha, the Wind Daimyo would automatically fall in line. After all, political power was useless when he could be killed on a whim by Sunagakure. The deterrence of other daimyos wouldn't matter if Konoha was a mess because Kumo and Iwa would focus on Konoha's vulnerability instead of listening to their daimyo. In addition, Sunagakure could use the victory to improve Rasa's image and increase the morale of the people in the Land of Wind. A lot of Sunagakure's problems would be resolved. However, that was assuming that Sunagakure won. If they lost, then their situation would become extremely dire. They could lose their elites, their Jinchuriki, and even their Kage. And unlike Konoha, who had a bunch of rank S ninjas who could replace Hiruzen, Suna didn't have any. Rasa had schemed against Pakura and got her killed while Sasori had gone rogue. So their plan was extremely risky. No one in the council wanted to take responsibility for such a decision. Finally, Rasa said, "There is still more than a month before we begin our attack. So we don't have to make a rash decision. The news we have so far is the one-sided story spread by Konoha." Baki said that he couldn't confirm how much of it is true. "My children were in the training ground when their battle happened. Baki will send us another message after he meets them and checks whether they saw anything. For now, we will continue our current preparations. I'll talk with Orochimaru when I meet with him and ask for his side of the story to get a better idea. We'll also discuss whether he can come up with any way of restraining the two Sanins. If he has sound plans that I agree with, we will carry out our attack as planned. If not..." Rasa went quiet for a few seconds before saying, "If not, then this attack will be called off." The entire council sucked a cold breath. All of them had spent months to ensure that their plans were perfect and that no mistakes were made in execution. Yet they could be forced to drop the entire plan. It was hard to digest, and yet no one opposed Rasa. It displayed how serious the situation was. In the forest of death, Fujin's clone saw the Odo squad making a move towards Sakura when he realized one thing. He thought, ugh, Lee isn't close to this place. Should I make a move myself or should I bring him here? Due to the massive battle between him and Orochimaru, most of the genins stayed away from the burnt area as it gave them creeps. Since Sakura was quite close to that area, most of the remaining squads weren't near her. Fujin's clone sensed Lee's position while thinking, luckily he isn't too far away. Oh well, I'll bring him here. After all, this was the first time these squads worked together. Another clone appeared next to him and disappeared immediately. Standing on a branch, Lee looked at dropping leaves and thought, if I can catch all 16 of these leaves before any of them hit the ground, then Sakura will fall in love with me. But if I miss even one, then my love for her will never be requited and she'll probably make fun of my hair. After creating his own training exercise, Lee jumped down to catch the leaves. However, just then, a strong breeze blew in that area. He barely managed to catch 4 of them when the remaining 12 began flying in another direction at high speeds. Lee was surprised and thought, what a strong wind current. Is a battle happening nearby? He changed his direction and caught 11 more leaves one by one before they fell to the ground. However, the last one moved forward at an incredible speed. Even though he ran after it at his highest speed while wearing the weights, he barely decreased the distance between them. He couldn't help but wonder, what is happening? Don't tell me that this is nature's way of telling me that my love will always be unrequited. No, I cannot accept it. I will not be defeated by a mere leaf. He continued running after it and managed to catch it in the end. Before he could rejoice, he heard a loud sound. He quickly moved forward to investigate it. Just like in the original story, he intervened in the battle in the nick of time. Chapter 626, Can Humans Do Something Like This? Fujin's clone watched as Lee intervened in the battle just in the nick of time. With him there, Fujin's clone decided to continue staying in the background. Just like in the original story, he saw Lee overwhelming the 3 Odo genins initially. However, things quickly turned around once Lee was hit by a sound wave. Fujin's clone ignored the result and focused on 2 things. Needless to say, the first thing was Lee's weights. The clone couldn't help but sigh and think, Guy is just too strict. Fujin himself used training seals. He still did. However, he always turned it off during missions, no matter how easy the mission was. Going outside with weights was plain stupid in his opinion even if he was under Guy's care. And yet, Guy made Lee do it. The reason for doing so was actually quite simple. Fujin's clone thought, in order to open more inner gates, we need to push our body beyond our limit. Though the inner gates have some requirements in terms of physique, opening them doesn't have much to do with the strength of the body beyond those basic requirements. After all, in terms of physique, the Raikage is much better than even Guy, and yet he can't open any inner gates. Guy is forcing Lee to wear the weights so that he continues facing challenging situations, which would slowly allow him to attack the remaining inner gates and open them one by one. While I understand the logic, he should give the kid some level of autonomy while he isn't close by. After all, it'd be a shame if he died without getting the opportunity to remove the weights. If Fujin didn't know that Lee would survive, he would have had a chat with Guy about the same. The second thing Fujin's clone paid attention to was the equipment attached to Zaku and Dasu's arms. He thought, using a speaker, though clumsy, is still all right. However, modifying his body in order to create sound waves. Fujin's clone shook his head as he thought, with that body modification, improving his physique would become several times harder. Even if he somehow lived, he'd never become a jounin. That said, it could be a good way to increase the powers of the adult ninjas who have given up on becoming chunins. Then again, doing that operation for hundreds of ninjas might not be feasible. Besides, why go through all this trouble when sound can be created just by the vibration of air? With Lee injured, Sakura stepped up. Even though she was slightly stronger than her canon counterpart, she was very exhausted due to having to stay up the entire night. Even so, she put up a better performance. She landed a hit on Kin and injured Zaku more than she did in the original story. Unfortunately, without any good ninjutsu or genjutsu, she was completely outmatched. It was rather ironic considering that her sensei was said to know 1,000 jutsus. There were no more surprises after that. Ino's team jumped in to help Sakura. When they were about to be defeated, Neji and Tenten arrived. However, they didn't take any action as Sasuke woke up. Powered by Orochimaru's curse seal, he crushed Zaku before being stopped by Sakura. Fujin's clone muttered, "It looks like the fun is over for now." The Odo ninjas escaped and Naruto finally woke up. He had a lot of catching up to do. The Odo ninjas escaped and Naruto finally woke up. He had a lot of catching up to do. The three genin squads hung together for some while so that their members could catch their breaths. Just when they were about to leave, Naruto asked, "By the way, what is this burning scent I have been smelling since I woke up? Also, where did that snake guy go?" Hearing his question, Sasuke realized and muttered, "That's right, I was getting an odd feeling." "It's this smell. Why is there such a smell in the forest?" Hearing their questions, Sakura answered, "We were saved by the proctor. He sent us flying to this safe place and confronted Orochimaru." Recalling their horrible chakra, Sakura shivered and added, "Their chakra was terrifying. It was even worse than Kakashi-sensei and Zabuza. I don't know what happened in their battle, but it caused a massive fire to break out. I guess the examiners later doused it." Naruto immediately exclaimed, "Big brother Fujin saved us. Phew, luckily he was the proctor." Sakura's words attracted the attention of Neji and Shikamaru. They both looked at her. Shikamaru complained in annoyance, "You mean to say that freaking Sannin was attracted here by you guys? How are you still alive?" Naruto immediately asked. "A Sannin? What's that?" Tenten answered. "It's not what but who. Lord Third Hokage trained 3 students. All 3 are extremely strong and are feared throughout the world. They are called the 3 legendary Sannins." Her words shocked Naruto and his teammates. Naruto immediately exclaimed, "He is the old man's student. Why did he attack us then?" Tenten answered, "He betrayed Konoha and went rogue around a decade ago. You should be grateful that you were saved by Fujin. Otherwise, there is no way you could have survived against him." Her words forced Sasuke to think, "No, that isn't entirely accurate. If he wanted to kill us, we would have been dead. From that fight, it looks like he was more interested in testing us and giving me this power instead of killing us. However, why did he do that? What was his goal?" As he was thinking, Naruto asked, "Do you know what happened in their fight?" "Did Big Brother Fujin win?" To Sasuke's surprise, Neji answered, "Suzuki Fujin won the fight. The massive fire you saw was set by his jutsu. Orochimaru was forced to escape with terrifying injuries. Fujin gave chase, but I'm not sure whether he killed Orochimaru or not." Sasuke's eyes widened as he thought, someone that strong was defeated so quickly. "No way, I'm sure that even Kakashi wouldn't have stood a chance against him. Is this Fujin guy so strong?" Sasuke glanced at Naruto, who had been talking about Fujin since the time they became genins under Kakashi. Needless to say, Naruto was thoroughly impressed. He exclaimed cheerfully, "As expected of Fujin. There's no way a damn snake would defeat him. Next time I'll pummel that snake myself, believe it." Needless to say, no one there believed him. Everyone ignored his antics. Ino said, "Sakura, you should look at the canal he created with his wind dragon jutsu while chasing after Orochimaru. It just extended endlessly and looked like it would travel across the world. He looked very cool when he used that jutsu and forced Orochimaru to run away." Realizing what she just said, she quickly looked at Sasuke and said, "But not as cool as you, Sasuke." Sakura immediately grabbed the opportunity. "Oh, it looks like you have a crush on someone, Ino. Don't worry, I won't fight over him with you." "Shut it, you billboard brow," Ino immediately replied angrily. Sakura cursed back, "Ino pig." Sasuke ignored the 2 girls and instead thought about Ino's words. The 3 genin squads finally split up. Unlike the other 2, Kakashi's squad still needed a break to rest and heal. Sasuke was suffering due to the cursed seal, while Naruto's control over chakra had gotten poor due to the 5-element seal placed on him. Without access to Kurama's chakra, he couldn't heal as quickly as he normally did. Sakura also had taken a beating and required sleep. They stayed in the same area until evening when the trio felt better. They were about to plan what to do to get the required scroll when Sasuke said, "Before we go hunting for the scroll, I want to see the location where the two of them fought." Realizing what he was referring to, Naruto said with a grin, "I want to see it too." Sakura was curious as well and didn't object. The three of them quickly moved to the area where Sakura had seen the fire. As they stood on the edge of the burned area, disbelief could be seen on all their faces. Naruto exclaimed, "No freaking way," Sakura muttered. "What happened here? How could this?" Sasuke clenched his fists in anger and reluctance. If he could do something like this, then have I only been playing games until now? If Itachi is as strong as these two, how much more do I need to train to have any chance of killing him? Sasuke found the reality very hard to digest. In front of him was a patch of land that was burned as far as his eyes could see. The fire jutsus that he prided in couldn't even achieve 1% of the destruction he was seeing. As he was looking at the burnt land, he noticed something from the corner of his eye and immediately began moving towards it. Naruto and Sakura chased after him, asking for him to wait. They reached him when he finally stopped. To their shock, he was as still as a statue as he looked in one direction. Naruto and Sakura followed his eyesight and were equally stunned. They were standing at the location from where Fujin had launched the Wind Dragon. In front of them was a trench that extended for more than a dozen kilometers across the forest. Sakura couldn't help but ask, how can all this be caused by just one jutsu? Can humans even do something like this? Chapter 627, Subtle Manipulation. While Team Kakashi was watching the destruction in disbelief, another squad was in panic mode. Karin's teammates returned after an unfruitful day. Both had several injuries and wanted to bite Karin to heal. To their shock, they couldn't find her. They quickly tried to look for her and found her remains. Both looked at each other and said, "Crap. Did that useless bitch die? Shit, if she is dead, then we won't be able to pass this round. Why couldn't that dumb bitch just stay hidden here? How hard is that?" "That's true. I didn't think she'd be so pathetic. We shouldn't have split up. Now Sensei will scold us due to her incompetence." With Karin dead, the two of them immediately began cursing her, completely unaware of the fact that she was safe and healthy at a place that was very far away from them. Meanwhile, Fujin would be quite happy that they collected evidence of her death themselves. In the land of rivers, Karin finally woke up. She saw that the sun was about to set. Her eyes landed on Fujin's clone sitting some distance away from her, and the memories of their meeting quickly appeared in her mind. Karin quickly gathered herself and asked, "Did I fall asleep?" Fujin's clone nodded and said, "Yes, I'd have woken you up, but it seemed like you were very tired. I guess you didn't sleep much last night." Karin nodded. The clone continued, "Anyway, we are almost at our base. I just stopped here because there is something I need to tell you first. It is related to your ability." Karin immediately became alert and asked, "What about my ability?" Fujin's clone said, "Even though I said that I don't need your ability is very convenient to use. So, if others knew about it, they would definitely ask you to use it to heal them. Of course, no one will force you and no one will keep using it to the extent that you would end up like your mother, but they'll still want to use it if only for the convenience." Karin became slightly dejected on hearing that. She thought, "I can't escape this curse. Still, at least I'll have a say here. I can accept that." To her surprise, Fujin's clone continued, "However, I can understand that you wouldn't want to use this ability. In fact, I don't want to see you use this ability either. So you won't be telling anyone about this ability of yours. Is that understood?" To say Karin was shocked was an understatement. Even though Fujin had claimed that he didn't want her for her ability, she didn't entirely believe him and just felt that she wouldn't suffer as much as she did in Kusagakure. There wasn't any way for her to guess that the reason why Fujin recruited her didn't have much to do with her healing ability. It had more to do with her Uzumaki blood and her future potential. While he would use her healing ability if need be, he didn't intend to make her the healer of the Phantom Haven Society. If anything, making her do that would be counterintuitive to his goal of creating top-quality medical ninjas in the Phantom Haven. It would also make her hate him, hence forcing her into that role would be extremely short-sighted. On the contrary, what he did will ensure that Karin becomes very loyal to him. She could become as loyal to him as Kimimaro was to Orochimaru. Since he couldn't keep an eye on the base all the time, this aspect was way more important for Fujin as compared to Orochimaru and Danzo. As Fujin had expected, his words had a massive impact on Karin. Fujin's impression in her mind became very good and she felt safe with him. She hadn't felt this safe with anyone else, not even with her mother as she was helpless herself. Karin thought, he's being so kind to me. I can't be so ungrateful, she said. I can use my ability if our organization needs it. As long as it is with my permission, I don't mind it. However, Fujin's clone shook his head and said, no, my reason for doing so isn't entirely for you. As I said earlier, your ability is too convenient. If you use it freely, everyone will become dependent on you and others will be reluctant to become medical ninjas because you can handle it. While it'll be fine for now since our organization is small, it'll become stressful for you as we grow bigger. That won't be good for your health. So, unless there is no other choice and you need to save someone, don't tell anyone about your ability. If you want to help others out, then learn medical ninjutsu and become a proper medical ninja instead of someone who just uses her natural ability. You'll be able to help out a lot more in that way, understood? With a smile on her face, Karin said, I understand. She thought, I guess I'll really be finding a good home now. I wish my mother was still alive. Perhaps she could have lived in peace here as well. Fujin's clone got up and said, good. I believe that even without this ability, you'll become an excellent medical ninja. Of course, don't be limited by your ability. You can do a lot more than just heal others. I hope to see you become a very strong ninja in the future. Let's go. His words increased Karin's confidence a lot. Ever since a young age, she had been just used by others for this ability of hers. Other than her mother, no one showed her love. No one showed her compassion. No one believed in her worth. Yet, Fujin's clone had spoken so highly of her and made her optimistic about her future. Karin quickly followed Fujin's clone as he moved towards the base. As he moved, Fujin's clone thought, not bad. I can sense various batches of ninjas training in this valley. It looks like Shigeaki has finally become confident enough to start training openly in the valley. Of course, with my seals, it'll still be difficult for anyone to detect them as long as they don't go in the outer parts. He avoided those ninjas and rushed straight to the center of the valley. Karin reached it a second later and looked around in confusion. There was no sign of any base around her. Instead, it just looked like a normal valley with no signs of civilization. She asked, is the base here? I can't see anything. Fujin's clone looked at her and said, try sensing but only in this area. Don't extend your chakra field beyond it. Karin followed his instructions while wondering, what does he want me to detect? As she expected, she couldn't sense anything and said, I can't sense anything here. Fujin's clone muttered, so you can't sense anything? Well, it's fine. It would be too much to expect you to sense it just because you are an Uzumaki. Karin asked, what does being an Uzumaki have to do with this? Fujin's clone made a hand seal while saying, even though your ability to heal others Fujin's clone made a hand seal while saying, even though your ability to heal others and transfer chakra is neat, that isn't what the Uzumaki clan was known for. I guess you don't know much about the original Uzumaki clan because it was destroyed long before your birth. Hearing about her clan, Karin became very curious. Her mother didn't tell her much due to her young age. So Karin was always curious about her clan and wondered frequently how her life would be if her clan still existed. Fujin's clone continued, I'll tell you a few things about the Uzumaki clan. They were known for two things. The first was their vast chakra reserves. It made them quite a menace on the battlefield, as they almost always outlasted their enemies. Your ability to heal others should be an added effect due to this aspect of Uzumaki ninjas. The second thing that they were known for was Fuinjutsu. This was even more dangerous. It was so dangerous that even the major villages were afraid of their seals. That fear made several major villages align together and attack Uzushiagakure, which ended up destroying the village and forcing some survivors like your mother to flee. Watch carefully. I'll show you what seals can do. Karin paid full attention to his words. For the first time, she had gotten a reason for her having that ability. She had also heard that the Uzumaki clan excelled in Fuinjutsu for the first time. She was very curious to see what the seals could do. Her eyes widened as the scenery around her changed. She saw the ground under her feet disappearing. Instead, a barrier appeared under her feet. Under the barrier, she saw several buildings and ninjas who were looking at the two of them. She realized that it was the Phantom Haven base. She couldn't help but wonder, was that genjutsu? No, my chakra isn't influenced. Can seals do something so extraordinary? I couldn't sense them despite them being so close to me. Fujin's clone said, "This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Fuinjutsu. If you are interested in it, then I'll provide you with the materials needed to learn it. Of course, you'll need to work with a lot of dedication for decades to actually become a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster. So don't think about it for the time being. I'll teach you more tricks once you become stronger if you develop an interest towards it." Karin just nodded obediently. The barrier under their feet suddenly disappeared and the two entered the base. Chapter 628, Spy Network. Inside the main office in the base, Shigeaki and Hayato sat on the opposite side of the desk. Both were looking at half a dozen papers on the desk while doing several calculations in their head. After a few minutes, Hayato sighed and said, "Our size is getting bigger. It's getting difficult to handle everything by ourselves." Thanks to the funds provided by Fujin, the Phantom Haven Society was able to expand rapidly. When he first started it, they had only 12 members other than Fujin. However, in less than a year, their numbers had increased by more than 10 times. Shigeaki nodded and replied, "Yeah, we can handle it for now, but if our numbers double once again, then we will need to delegate these tasks to others and only do the final approval. Even if our numbers don't double, we won't be able to handle it all once the students become field agents." Hayato agreed and said, "We are almost becoming like an official hidden village. What happened?" As he was talking, Hayato saw Shigeki's expression becoming serious. Shigeaki said, "Someone just activated the barrier. Shiden is probably back. Let's go." He immediately flickered. Hayato couldn't flicker without any seals and was a bit slower. He weaved a hand seal and flickered while thinking. He returned so soon. That's strange. Earlier, he always visited with a gap of at least 3 months. However, it has just been a month since his last visit. As soon as they arrived outside, they saw Shiden landing in the base along with a red-haired girl. The others in the base who were at the top were also looking at them. Shigeaki immediately flickered in front of Fujin and said respectfully, "Shiden, it's great to see you again so soon." Fujin's clone nodded and said, "It's good to be back." He looked at Karin and said, "She is Karin. She'll be joining us. Her rank will be field agent, but for now, she'll focus on training like the students." Karin, he's Shigeaki. He's a vice leader of the Phantom Haven Society and the leader here in my absence. If you have any queries, you can approach him. Even though his words created a lot of questions in her mind, Karin nodded and said respectfully, "I'll be in your care." Shigeaki looked towards Karin and thought, so that's why he's early. This is the second time he's brought a young ninja here. Will her talent be as ludicrous as Ranmaru? Shigeaki didn't understand why Fujin had brought a little kid the previous time. All his questions and doubts were blown away when he saw the progress Ranmaru made in the academy. His talent was off the charts. None of the older ninjas in the base had seen anyone even remotely as talented as the boy in Tanagakure. It had increased their respect for Shiden by another level. Since he brought another young ninja, Shigeaki became curious about her. Fujin's clone looked at Hayato and said, "Hayato, make her staying arrangements and introduce her to some of the facilities here." "I'll catch up with Shigeaki." Hayato nodded and said, "All right." He quickly took Karin away while Fujin's clone and Shigeaki walked towards the main office. As they walked, Fujin's clone gazed at the buildings in the base. As compared to the initial rough structures he had created, the base now had a completely different look. All the buildings were properly built. The academy and the living quarters looked far more pleasing to the eye and were comfortable for everyone to use. A hospital had been built to teach medical ninjutsu and treat injured ninjas. Many training grounds had been built around the academy to practice simple things like shuriken throwing and taijutsu. Of course, the main training grounds were outside the base in the massive valley. The main headquarters was decorated a bit to make it look more grand than the remaining buildings. The library was made artistic as well. The two of them entered the headquarters and walked into the main office. Both sat down as Fujin's clone said, "So, how's everything here? Did anything major happen in the last month?" Shigeaki immediately updated Fujin on everything that happened since his last visit. In the end, he added, "Even though nothing major has happened, we have made a lot of progress. Our spy network in the land of rivers has been completed. We have one informer in every village and town except Tanigakure. Since you warned us about a possible conflict between Konoha and Suna, we stopped trying to extend it directly into the land of fire and the land of wind. Instead, we followed your leads and expanded in the two countries from the south, in the coastal areas. We should be able to expand all the way to the eastern parts of the land of wind in a few months, but it is difficult to expand into the land of fire, as the Konoha ninjas frequently patrol the areas. So, we directly moved through the seas and extended the spy network into the land of tea. We should be able to complete it within a month, and then we will extend it to the land of noodles. We'll need your guidance to expand it beyond that," Fujin's clone said. "You've progressed very well. No need to worry about expanding beyond it. Let's consolidate our current network and ensure that everything is working efficiently. We can begin expanding once again once there aren't any more issues." Shigeaki nodded and said, "I and Hayato were of the same view." Fujin's clone asked, "What about the new recruits? How many members do we have now?" Shigeaki sighed and answered, "I'm not sure if this is a good thing or bad. We rescued 7 villages in the last month and ended up recruiting 73 children. Currently, we have 131 students, 23 field agents, 24 if I include Karin, and just 3 captains. We'll need at least 2 years before some of the students might be ready to perform field operations. However, going by your standards, they might need another couple of years to be promoted to field agents. Unless we can somehow recruit a few dozen field agents and a few captains, we won't be able to look after more students. Not to mention, we don't have any commanders except you and me." Fujin's clone replied with a hint of sadness in his voice. "Under normal circumstances, I'd have considered this as a happy problem. However, being able to recruit so many students shows how messed up this world is. It proves how important our existence is." Shigeki's heart stirred due to the sadness in his voice. He couldn't help but feel sad as well. At the same time, his belief in the Phantom will strengthened. He muttered, "That's true. Even though we are doing good, we still need to do a lot more." Fujin's clone nodded and said, "Yes. However, it is also important that we survive to do our work. Without sufficient strength, our goal will remain just a dream. Don't forget that we don't enjoy the same benefits as a ninja village. We can't train a large number of kids at the same time. For the time being, stop recruiting new students. Only recruit if someone displays high talent like Ranmaru. We will focus more on quality than quantity." Due to what they have experienced, all the students will be highly motivated. With our training plan, they will become stronger faster even compared to the kids in the major villages, even if they aren't as talented as them. Right now, they have just started training. In the next 12 to 18 months, you'll observe some students standing out as compared to the rest. Once that happens, we can implement my idea for making clubs in the academy. After that, you'll see the students taking care of each other and reduce the pressure on teachers. That might allow us to recruit some more students. Of course, even though the recruitment will stop, our activities shouldn't. Continue helping the villages you can help while avoiding confrontation with Tanagakyur. Shigeaki immediately nodded and said, I understand. Fujin's clone continued, as for recruiting field agents, captains and commanders in decent numbers, that'll be difficult. Not everyone will believe in the phantom will. There are too many like Reiga who'd cause trouble instead of solving it. Instead of focusing on recruitment, focus more on increasing the strength of our current members. By the time the students start becoming field agents, our current field agents should become strong enough to become captains. Similarly, the captains should work hard to become commanders. It'll take a while, but this is the most stable way to become strong enough to achieve our goals. Shigeaki thought for a bit and agreed with Fujin's thoughts, but he had a few doubts. He said, while I agree with your thoughts, it isn't easy to make older ninjas stronger. How will we do that? Fujin's clone chuckled and said, that is the other reason for my visit. Chapter 629, A New Student. Fujin's clone chuckled and said, that is the other reason for my visit. Shigeaki was surprised. However, his surprise soon changed into glee. Shigeaki had benefited heavily due to Fujin's guidance. He could now be considered an elite jounin even in the major villages. In addition, Fujin was extremely resourceful and had single-handedly built the entire library and created the entire base. If he intended to help improve the strength of other members, then Shigeaki didn't doubt the results at all. He said in excitement, that's great. Will you be guiding them like you guided me? Fujin's clone replied with a hint of amusement. That was my plan initially. However, seeing how much you've improved over the last year, I got another idea. You'll test all field agents and captains except Karin and guide them just like how I guided you. Help them reach the next level. Shigeaki's smile faded away in an instant. He became hesitant and said, I don't think I can guide them as well as you can. Fujin's clone chuckled and said, consider it as a test. I want to see how well you can do this task. Besides, even though you are unsure, I'm confident in you. Hearing those words, Shigeaki couldn't refute him. He could only accept the task and said, I'll do my best. Fujin's clone nodded approvingly and said, that's what I expect as well. Anyway, don't take a lot of pressure. Just test out their strengths, identify their weaknesses, and analyze what they should work on to become considerably stronger. Of course, I won't leave you without any assistance. Read this. He handed Shigeaki a scroll. Puzzled, Shigeaki opened it and began reading. The scroll had a list of jutsu names with their basic descriptions. Fujin's clone explained, this scroll contains a list of the jutsus I will add to our library. Shigeaki's eyes widened in shock. He looked at Fujin's clone and asked, there are hundreds of jutsus mentioned here. Many of them are rank A and B. Will you add this many scrolls? Shigeaki didn't believe it. Fujin's clone wasn't surprised by his reaction. This time, he had created jutsu scrolls for nearly every jutsu that existed in multiple villages. In addition, he also created scrolls for several jutsus that were known only to Kiri, at least on the surface. Needless to say, he had obtained all of them from Reiga's memories. Combined with their previous collection, Phantom Haven Society's library would exceed that of every minor village by a large degree. It would be just under the 5 major villages. In fact, it could even compete with some of them. So Shigeaki's shock was completely justified. Fujin's clone replied, of course, I will. While it is true that strengthening older ninjas isn't easy, it is important to remember that all of you grew up in Tanagakyur, which didn't have as many jutsus as we do. Though these jutsus won't promote them to the next rank, they would at least become far more formidable within their current ranks. Along with your recommendations, they might just be able to make a breakthrough. Shigeaki nodded and replied, yes, that should be enough. Fujin's clone added, I'll let them improve themselves in this way. Once they hit their next bottleneck, I'll guide them like I guided you. Shigeaki was relieved to hear that. Fujin's clone got up and said, "Go through the list in the scroll once. Let me know if you have any queries. I'll place the scrolls in the library while you do so. When I return, we'll head out to apply the phantom seal on our new recruits." Shigeaki replied, "All right." The two immediately got to work. Within the next couple of hours, Fujin added over a couple of hundred scrolls to the library before applying the phantom seal on all the new recruits and influencing them with the phantom will. As they returned back to the main base, Shigeaki asked, "How long will you stay this time?" Fujin's clone replied, "Not too long. I've done most of the things that I wanted to. I'll guide Karin for a bit before leaving so that she gets on the right track. I'll check on Ranmaru and the other current students as well to encourage them to work harder." Shigeaki replied, "That's good. I'm sure the kids will be happy to see you. Ranmaru always keeps asking about you." Fujin's clone nodded and replied, "Yeah, I'll meet with him as well. Has he progressed any further in the last month?" Shigeaki immediately updated him on Ranmaru's progress. The two chatted until they returned to the main base before splitting up. Fujin's clone flickered behind Karin, who was standing on her balcony while staring at the night sky, and asked, "Feeling comfortable here?" Karin was startled and quickly looked back. She relaxed on seeing him and said with a smile, "Yes, this place is very peaceful. Elder Hayato showed me all the important places." Fujin's clone said, "That's good. Did H?" Karin cut him off and asked nervously, "Is it true that you won't stay here for long?" Fujin's clone was surprised by that question. A smile formed on his face as he patted her head to comfort her. He said, "Don't worry. I trust everyone here. You can as well. I know that your life in Cusa was hell. However, that is in your past. You won't suffer here. Meet new people and make friends here. The ones in charge are probably too old for you to make friends, but there are also a lot of young kids here. They are being trained as students. If you'd like, you can help them out in their training. They'll be much more comfortable with someone just a few years older than them. In time, you'll completely forget about Cusa. As for me, I'll keep visiting occasionally." Karin smiled and replied, "All right." Fujin's clone nodded and said, "That said, even though I asked you to leave Kusagakure in your past, don't ever forget the pain you and your mother had to suffer. Even though you are safe here today, I can't say what will happen a few years from now. The only way to ensure that you never suffer like that again is by making yourself so strong that no one will dare to mistreat you." His voice was extremely serious as he said that. Karin realized it and became serious as well. She promised, "I'll train hard." Fujin's clone said, "Good. Before I leave, I'll guide you and set you on the right path. Tell me all your abilities except your healing one." Karin nodded and answered, "I can use substitution, transformation, and clone jutsu, and can use shuriken and kunai properly." Fujin's clone thought, that's not much to work on. If not for her healing ability, she wouldn't be much different from an average genin. Then again, considering that Cusa only exploited her healing ability, it is to be expected. And given her depressing circumstances, I doubt she'd have the heart to train in Cusa. Now that I think about it, she didn't have many good skills apart from healing and sensing even in the future, until she unlocked that chain ability of the Uzumaki clan. Though good in that particular role, it'd be a waste to keep her limited to that. Karin became nervous about seeing him in deep thought. She thought, "I should have practiced more in the village. However, they always drained all my chakra." Fujin's clone finally spoke. "Don't take it the wrong way, but that's very basic. You'll need to work very hard to become strong enough to protect yourself from anyone and help others." Karin became depressed after hearing that. Luckily for her, Fujin's clone continued, "The good thing is that since you have only done the basics, you haven't gone down any wrong path, so you can train the right way. Are you ready?" Karin's mood became better. She smiled and said, "I am." She immediately bowed slightly and said gratefully, "Thank you, Sensei." Behind his mask, Fujin's clone raised an eyebrow and thought, "I didn't expect her to become cheeky so soon. I guess she has become comfortable with the new environment. Then again, this isn't bad by any means." Fujin's clone handed her a chakra paper and said, "Run your chakra through it." Karin sighed in relief internally as Fujin didn't reject her. She accepted the paper and followed his instructions. Fujin's clone saw the chakra paper becoming wet and wondered, "Why do nearly all my students have an affinity to water?" Chapter 630, Training Plan. Why do nearly all my students have an affinity to water? Among the 5 orphans he was training, 4 had an affinity to water. Thankfully, an equal number of them had an affinity to wind as well. Now, Karin had an affinity to water manipulation as well. He thought, then again, it isn't a bad thing. Nearly everyone I recruited from Tanagakure have an affinity to water. I can dump her elemental training on Shigeaki. Karin looked at the wet chakra paper and asked, "Why did it get wet, sensei?" Fujin's clone explained, "That is a chakra paper. It identifies your nature affinity. Since it became wet, it shows that you have an affinity for water manipulation." Karin asked, "What does that mean?" Fujin's clone wasn't surprised by that question. He had no expectations from Kusa to have given her a proper education. He explained to her everything about nature transformation, including the yin and yang release, Kekkei Genkai, strengths and weaknesses of all elements, among other things. He patiently answered all her doubts. In the end, he added, "Even though the chakra paper shows that you have an affinity to water, considering your ability to heal, you should have a very high talent in yang release, since yang chakra is used for healing others. Once you get a hang of yang release, learning yin release becomes easy as well. However, those are rather advanced concepts. I'll teach you how to use them later. For now, we will start by establishing a very strong foundation. Are you ready to start?" Having been put to sleep for nearly half a day, Karin wasn't sleepy. She nodded and said, "Yes, sensei." Fujin's clone replied, "Good, follow me." The two left the base and arrived in the valley. They didn't walk too far away as Fujin's clone just led Karin to the nearest tree. He said, "Your training will be conducted in phases. Each phase will make your foundation sturdier and help you become stronger faster in the future. We will first start with chakra control." He explained Karin the theory behind chakra control and demonstrated the tree climbing exercise. Karin immediately tried it and ended up falling down. Fujin's clone said, "This will be your first exercise. It'll take around a week or 2 for you to completely master it. Then you'll move on to the next exercise, that is, the water walking exercise." Karin asked curiously, "Sensei, do you mean that I can walk on water?" Fujin's clone nodded and answered, "Yes." He turned his gaze to the tree and said, "When you climb up the trees, you are walking against trunks that are sturdy and solid. By comparison, using your chakra to walk on water is much more difficult due to it being liquid." Karin nodded, understanding how complex it would be. Fujin's clone continued, "Don't worry, it'll feel easier when you try it. Coming back to your training, you'll train these 2 exercises until you can freely run and spar on water. Once your chakra control is up to par, we will begin on the more interesting aspects." "Did Hayato show you the library?" Karin nodded. Fujin's clone continued, "In the library, you'll find a scroll for the body flicker jutsu. When you are completely comfortable with water walking, you'll learn this jutsu. This jutsu will be a very important jutsu in your arsenal for decades. So, train it with all your heart. If you have any doubts about it, you can ask Shigeaki about it if I am not here. If you have any doubts about it, you can ask Shigeaki about it if I am not here. He's very good at using it. This will be the second step of your training. As for the third step, that's where you'll begin learning more things. You'll start working on 3 things simultaneously. First, we'll be learning water manipulation and a few water jutsus. This will be taught to you by Shigeaki. The second thing will be medical ninjutsu. Hayato will teach you about it. The last thing will be using the body flicker jutsu without any seals. I'll guide you regarding it when I return later." Karin memorized all his words accurately. She asked Fujin's clone a few doubts which were promptly answered. With everything discussed, Fujin asked Karin to begin practicing tree climbing. She practiced until dawn under his watchful eye. Fujin's clone analyzed him. "Looks like chakra control isn't her strong suit." At least not yet. Still, this is far better than Naruto. She should be done with this in around 5 days. Karin tried climbing up the tree without using her hands once again. Unfortunately, she couldn't hang on and fell once again. She had long lost the count of how many times she had fallen that night. To her relief, Fujin's clone said, "That's enough for now. Have some rest. You can continue practicing it later." Karin nodded and replied, "All right, sensei." Fujin's clone made a hand seal to deactivate the barrier when Karin asked nervously, "Do you have to go back due to that intense clash that happened during our exam?" Nervousness could be seen on her face. Anyone could see that she didn't want him to get caught up in such a dangerous situation. Fujin's clone replied, "Not really. I have a lot of other tasks to do." Karin sighed in relief and asked, "If you don't mind me asking, could you tell me what happened there on the first day of our exam?" Fujin's clone replied casually, "It was a clash between two rank S ninjas. You don't need to worry about it for the time being. Just remember to avoid such places if you detect such an intense confrontation." Karin nodded and said in amazement, "So rank S ninjas are that strong? I didn't know that. I sensed that one of the chakras belonged to our proctor. Who was the other one? Did he die?" Fujin's clone was surprised for a moment and wondered, did she sense that battle as well? "I didn't notice." Then again, my attention was focused on Orochimaru and space-time sensing technique can't identify chakra signatures. He shook his head and replied, "Killing a rank S ninja is very difficult. In majority of the cases, they are only forced to retreat. The same thing happened there as well. The second guy was Orochimaru, one of the Sanins. Anyway, as I just said, no need to worry about this. Focus on your own training. Unless you can gain the commander rank in Phantom Haven Society, you don't even need to think about rank S." Karin nodded and said, "Yes, sensei." The two returned to the base. As Fujin's clone had said earlier, he went to meet with the students, both old and new. Since he had applied phantom seals on everyone, Shigeaki and the rest brought all the new recruits into the main base, and the new students were inducted on that very day. Fujin's clone took the opportunity to create an impression and increase their belief in the phantom will. He also met up with Ranmaru, whose progress was as good as he expected. Within a few months, he had learnt tree climbing and water walking along with the 3 basic jutsus. He was currently working on the body flicker jutsu. Needless to say, the training plan for him was also created by Fujin. After meeting with Ranmaru, Fujin's clone thought, "My chakra is nearly empty. I won't be able to sustain myself for much longer." He quickly called Shigeaki and Hayato for a brief meeting in the main office. Once they arrived, he explained to them the training plan for Karin and asked them to help her out. He ended by saying, "Shigeaki, once she's done with the body flicker jutsu, guide her in water release. Hayato, you should guide her to become a medical ninja." Hayato replied hesitantly, "If I may, I don't think it is a good idea. Our manpower is already very low. We will be struggling just with the students. To guide her so much might not be feasible. Also, making someone learn 2 fields so different from each other at the same time isn't good for their growth." To his surprise, Fujin's clone replied, "They are valid points. However, don't worry. I don't make any rash decisions. Karin's talent is worth spending so much effort on her. As for multiple fields, I recruited her because she seems talented in medical ninjutsu. So you'll have to do a good job, Hayato. I have added several books related to medical ninjutsu in the library. Feel free to go through them." Having seen Ranmaru's talent, neither Hayato nor Shigeaki questioned his judgment. However, both were puzzled about one important aspect. Chapter 631, Phantom Haven's Path. Hayato asked, "If she is talented at medical ninjutsu, wouldn't it be better if we make her focus entirely on training medical ninjutsu? That way, she'll become a very good medical ninja instead of someone like me who doesn't specialize in either medical ninjutsu or nature manipulation. Right now, we are lacking a lot in medical ninjutsu as I'm the only one who can do it a bit. It'll be beneficial for our organization if we can have someone who specializes in it entirely." Shigeaki nodded, agreeing with Hayato's opinion. The lack of medical ninjas was a very troubling aspect for him, as they couldn't heal the people they rescued unless Hayato went on the mission. Even in that case, he wasn't always able to heal everyone due to limited chakra. To their surprise, Fujin's clone shook his head and said, "A medical ninja who can't defend herself is a useless one." "Do you think that Tsunade of the Sannin depends on others to defend her?" Shigeaki replied hesitantly. I don't think that comparing with a rank S medical ninja is appropriate. After all, nearly every other medical ninja in the world doesn't focus on fighting, and there is no one else who is at rank S. If needed, we could train Karin a bit to defend herself after she has become a capable medical ninja. For now, we could focus on just improving her medical skills." Hayato added, "That's right, doing both at the same time is very difficult." Despite their arguments, Fujin's clone replied, "This point is non-negotiable. The Phantom Haven Society won't have any medical ninjas who can't defend themselves." He looked at Hayato and said, "Hayato, once the students complete their chakra control exercises, you'll get an idea of who has some talent at becoming medical ninjas. After you test them and select the ones who have some talent at the Yang and Yin release, you'll be following a training plan along these lines. While their main focus will be on medical ninjutsu, they won't abandon everything else as most of the medical ninjas in the world. Every one of them has to be a master at the body flicker jutsu and should be able to use it without any seals. Similarly, they will train the element they have an affinity to, which could become their main method of fighting. Alternatively, they could focus on genjutsu if they prefer it to nature manipulation. Irrespective of what they choose, they'll learn the jutsus that allow them to hide and travel underground along with a defensive jutsu like earth or water wall. Along with ninjutsu, they will also have decent basics in taijutsu and basic weapons like shuriken, kunai, or senbon needles. A few years in the future, once they learn about poisons, they could use them to complement their fighting skills. These are the basic requirements for becoming a medical ninja in the Phantom Haven Society. If they can't handle it, then they are better off becoming a normal ninja. His strict tone caught Shigeaki and Hayato off guard. Neither expected Fujin to be so adamant about this aspect, considering that he had been quite flexible until then. Both fell quiet. Fujin's clone noticed their emotions and said softly, "Don't restrict yourself to what you have experienced in Tanigakure. The children that grew up within those safe walls don't have the same will and determination as the ones here. If you hold our students to the same standards, then your lax expectations will lead to them being satisfied with becoming ordinary instead of striving to be extraordinary. Instead of being satisfied by them becoming Chunin-level field agents, work as if you want to make all 131 students rank S ninjas. Make them strive to reach it. Only if we do that there would be any hope of someone reaching such a level. Even if no one does, they'll still be much stronger and would become captains and commanders in our organization instead of being stuck at field agent rank for decades." His words forced the two of them to think. Even though they considered themselves the elites in Tanigakure, their worldview was being broken and they were forced to think beyond it. Shigeaki adjusted to it quickly as he had seen Fujin in action. However, it was a new experience for Hayato. Fujin's clone didn't disturb them and let them use their own thoughts to convince themselves. After a couple of minutes, both of them nodded. Shigeaki said, "I understand. We will make the students strive for the top." Hayato added, "I never thought from this point of view. I'll do my best to ensure that the students who focus on medical ninjutsu don't lack combat skills." Fujin's clone replied, "Good. I have added several scrolls and books containing advanced-level knowledge of medical ninjutsu to improve our library. You should check them out as well. They will help you improve." Hayato was surprised. He said, "All right, I'll look into it." Fujin's clone replied, "Good. Shigeaki, I'll leave the rest to you." "It's time for me to leave." Shigeaki asked a few more things before Fujin's clone left. He exited the base and dispelled himself in the valley. In the tower in the Forest of Death, Fujin received the memories of his clone. He thought, everything went as planned. Shigeaki should have understood what my intentions are. As long as he does it correctly and I get lucky, I might have the strongest force a decade after the Fourth Great Ninja War ends. That said, even if they don't do that well, it doesn't matter as long as my spy network is working well. Anyway, since my shadow clone can teleport there within a minute, I don't need to take missions to go there. I can send one more frequently as well when nothing important is happening in the village. While Fujin was going through his memories, another important meeting was taking place in the Forest of Death between the traitor and the spy. Kabuto looked at Orochimaru and said, "It looks like you got roughed up pretty badly." Leaning against a tree, Orochimaru chuckled and said, "That boy is quite impressive. He is even more ruthless than Kakashi. Escape if you face him." Kabuto became serious and asked, "Is he that powerful?" Orochimaru said, "More than his strength, it's his cunningness and carefulness that makes him a bigger threat. My plans will have to change to consider his threat. I might need Rasa to restrict him while I deal with Hiruzen." Kabuto frowned and said, "The fourth Kazekage is very prideful and egoistic. He might feel insulted to face someone so young in battle openly and might refuse this plan." Orochimaru replied, "Do you think that I didn't think about it already? Unfortunately, that is the best option. You and Kimimaro can't stall him for long enough." Kabuto thought for a bit and replied, "I understand. I'll see if I can get any information that might help us convince the fourth Kazekage." Orochimaru said, "Good. Do that after this round is over. Until then, continue your current mission and collect information on Sasuke. Keep the information with you and pass it to me later. We won't meet in the tower as planned initially." Kabuto became confused and wondered, "That's strange. Is Orochimaru so afraid of Kabuto?" Became confused and wondered, "That's strange. Is Orochimaru so afraid of that boy?" Orochimaru could read his thoughts at a glance and laughed dryly. He said, "While I enjoy your snarky nature, you shouldn't be so impudent, Kabuto. The tower is under strict surveillance. I won't be able to enter it undetected. I can still enter using the disguise of a Jounin sensei. However, there are a few thousand seals that are newly inscribed on the tower. Knowing that Hiruzen will be there as well, it might just be a trap set for me. I'll just send a shadow clone to attend to the normal duties of a sensei." "Seals?" Kabuto muttered as he felt something fishy. He looked at Orochimaru and said, "Orochimaru-sama, I have a feeling that these seals don't have any meaning." Orochimaru was intrigued by his statement and asked, "What do you mean?" Kabuto answered, "I have a feeling that he inscribes those seals just for the sake of it, or perhaps it is his hobby. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense for him to have tens of thousands of seals on his house when a few hundred are more than sufficient. I guess he just inscribes seals wherever he stays." Orochimaru was surprised. He thought for a bit. A malicious smile appeared on his face as he said, "That's interesting. Chapter 632, Mind Games. That's an interesting way to look at it." Orochimaru fell into a thought. He began analyzing whether he should take a risk or not. He had several ideas to create a mess and cause chaos in Konoha, but failed to see how any of the situation would be beneficial to him or his plans. After a couple of minutes, he said, "Perhaps, or it could also be his attempt to make it feel like this is normal for him and bait others by making them think that it is a bluff. Regardless, there is no reason to test it out right now, as it might give Hiruzen a reason to cancel the exams. We'll continue as per my instructions." Kabuto nodded and said, "All right, Orochimaru-sama." Orochimaru immediately disappeared. Realizing the real strength of Fujin caused him some headaches. He had just a month to make sufficient arrangements to ensure that no one else would disturb him until he had killed Hiruzen. Otherwise, he would be swamped by thousands of Konoha ninjas and wouldn't have any chance to kill Hiruzen. He wanted to make plans to avoid that situation, as well as on how to deal with it if he couldn't prevent it from happening. With Orochimaru not making any move and other villages waiting patiently to get more accurate intel, things calmed down. The Chunin exams returned to their normal course. Apart from a few squads who completed the second phase early and the ones who were eliminated, the remaining squads stayed in the forest until the last day. Fujin's clone kept an eye on Kakashi's students the entire time just in case Orochimaru or Kabuto made a strange move. On the last day, Kabuto showed up to stop Naruto from opening their scroll. As soon as he did, he realized, someone is watching me, or rather Sasuke's squad. Is it Suzuki Fujin or other Anbu ninjas? No, I didn't sense anyone until now. In fact, I could barely feel anyone looking at me when I grabbed Naruto's hand. It should be Fujin or his clone. Understandable, I suppose. They should be on guard against another sudden move by Orochimaru-sama. Kabuto didn't show any indication that he realized that he was being watched and acted completely normally. He tagged along with them until they fell into the trap set by the AIM squad. Thanks to Kakashi's training, they had far more stamina and chakra as compared to their canon counterparts at this point. Even though Sasuke struggled due to the cursed seal, Naruto was able to destroy their illusions on a large scale using the Great Breakthrough Jutsu and force them into a head-on battle. The AIM genins used another round of genjutsu and attacked by hiding underground. Naruto used another Great Breakthrough Jutsu, but it didn't affect this genjutsu. He tried attacking with close combat and nearly fell into their trap, but was rescued by Kabuto, who got injured in return. Since Fujin was keeping an eye, Kabuto didn't do anything strange and quietly endured the beating instead of scaring and paralyzing them. Even so, he provided Naruto with an opening to knock them all out. Seeing Kabuto's actions, Fujin's clone couldn't help but chuckle in amusement. He muttered to himself, as expected of a spy of his caliber. If I didn't know about the truth, it would have been difficult to suspect him of being such a deadly spy. To think that a guy playing with genins would become one of the most dangerous people 4 years later. A deadpan expression appeared on his face as he realized, I guess that's not even the least bit strange when compared to how much those 3 kids would grow. One would reach the level of the Sanins, and the other 2 would reach Hashirama and Madara's level. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. If he said such things openly, everyone in the village would laugh at him. After Naruto and company entered the tower, the clone dispelled himself and sent the memories back to his main body. The top floor of the tower had a lot more people as compared to the first day. Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai, Guy and a few others were present along with Fujin's group. In fact, even Hiruzen had returned to the tower along with his Anbu guards and other proctors. Fujin said, Kakashi, it looks like your students have made it through as well. Fujin turned his gaze towards Hayate and said, that makes it 7 squads. You might need to conduct preliminaries to trim the numbers. Hayate coughed and said, yes, 21 is too high. Kakashi sighed and said, I will need to wait to take care of Sasuke. Anko immediately said, he has the cursed seal on him. Pull him out of the exam, seal Orochimaru's cursed seal and keep him under the protection of Anbu. Kakashi asked, and you really think that he'd just quietly follow your orders? Keep in mind that he is a member of the Uchiha clan. Anko immediately argued back. After some discussion, Hiruzen agreed to let Sasuke participate as long as the cursed seal didn't act up. Fujin said, all right. Anyway, you can take over from me, Anko. I'll be back before the genins gather together. Delay it for a bit if I am late. Fujin disappeared from the room, leaving others wondering what he was up to. Only Hiruzen watched intently and thought, so he wants to deal with that seal immediately. I should send a clone to keep an eye on. Nothing can be allowed to go wrong, especially with Orochimaru and Gaara around. Even though Fujin inscribed seals on the tower, it's best to prevent it instead of dealing with it. A shadow clone popped next to him and disappeared from the room as well. I'm a full-fledged shinobi, you got that. On the bottom floor, Naruto replied confidently when Iruka expressed his worry for his safety. Unfortunately for Naruto, his confidence all went down the drain as a hand grabbed the back of his neck and he heard, come with me, Mr. Full-Fledged Shinobi. Fuji. Even before Naruto could form a word, he disappeared along with Fujin. Uruka was startled but relaxed on seeing that it was Fujin. Even so, he couldn't help but think, that's strange. Why did he take away Naruto in such a hurry? Sasuke and Sakura only caught a glimpse of him. Sasuke's expression became very serious. He looked at Uruka and asked, "Uruka-sensei, is it true that Fujin defeated Orochimaru?" Uruka smiled and said, "It's completely true." Orochimaru was badly injured and forced to escape from the training ground. Uruka's words brought back the memories of the destruction he had seen in the forest. During the time he spent in the forest, they traveled along the length of the canal, left behind by the Wind Dragon. Sasuke had a difficult time believing that a single jutsu could cause such destruction. He clenched his fists and thought, he is only a year older than Haku and can defeat Orochimaru, an opponent who was so strong that he made me feel hopeless. I need to be much stronger to kill Itachi. Sasuke couldn't help but feel that he had a long way to go. Unlike in the original story, the impression Orochimaru made on Sasuke's young mind was eroded significantly due to his defeat. Even though he knew that he couldn't face Orochimaru, knowing that Orochimaru was defeated decreased his image considerably. Fujin entered the meditation room and dropped Naruto, who failed to make Fujin loosen his grip no matter what he did. As soon as he fell to the ground, he complained, "Hey, don't make me look so uncool in front of Sakura-chan." Fujin raised an eyebrow and asked, "Your chakra network is a mess and you're concerned about looking cool. Should I pull you out of the exam and ask someone to inspect whether your brain suffered some damage?" Naruto immediately tried arguing, "Hey, don't talk about. Huh, what do you mean by my chakra network is a mess?" Fujin asked. "Didn't you have difficulty in channeling your chakra and creating jutsus?" Naruto thought for a bit and said, "Ah, that's right. My great breakthrough jutsu's power was weaker than usual and took slightly longer to create. Why is that?" Fujin replied, "It is due to your encounter with Orochimaru. He put a seal on you to cut off Kyuubi's chakra. Remove your shirt and flow chakra through your chakra network." Naruto was surprised. He followed Fujin's instructions while saying, "You mean that Snake Lady did something to me?" Fujin's eyes twitched as he thought, Snake Lady. Pervy Sage, Granny, and Snake Lady. I wonder what image the Sanins will have left if these names spread. Chapter 633, A Natural at Yin and Yang Release. Fujin didn't say anything and just nodded. As Naruto began regulating his chakra and flowing it through his network, the 8 trigrams divination seal appeared on his abdomen. Soon, the 5 elements seal appeared surrounding it. Naruto kept looking at Fujin and asked, "By the way, how strong is that Snake Lady? Was she difficult to defeat?" Fujin replied, "Very strong. I might not have won if we were fighting in a neutral territory. Anyway, don't move and brace yourself." Naruto watched as the fingertips of Fujin's right hand began glowing. Before he could ask what it was, Fujin slammed his hand into his abdomen and hit the seal Orochimaru had placed on Naruto. 5 elements unseal, Naruto immediately collapsed to the ground and asked in annoyance, "What the hell was that?" Fujin chuckled and said, "Told you to brace yourself. Now stop being a crybaby and regulate your chakra once again." Naruto complained, "Crybaby my ass, at least tell me what you are doing." "Huh, my chakra is flowing very smoothly. What's going on?" Fujin said, "I have removed the seal that the Snake Lady put on you. In the next round you will have to fight again. With this, you'll be able to fight at your best. Now run along. The next round should be starting soon. You might get disqualified if you're late." Naruto immediately panicked and rushed to the location where the genins were gathered after Fujin informed him about it. Alone in the room, he asked, "Were there any complications?" Out of thin air, Hiruzen's clone appeared in the room and said, "No. You were correct. Orochimaru didn't interfere with the 8 trigrams divination seal and only applied the 5 elements seal to cut off the connection between the seal and Naruto's remaining chakra network. It would have been complicated if he had interfered with the seal." Fujin nodded, but wasn't really worried. Not only did he already know that Orochimaru wouldn't mess with the seal, but he also knew about the arrangements Minato left in that seal, so there wasn't any danger of Kyuubi breaking loose. Hiruzen's clone said, "You did good work. Go join the others. The fights might be entertaining." Fujin chuckled and replied, "True. The genins participating aren't ordinary by any means. Did you catch any trail of Orochimaru?" Hiruzen's clone shook his head and said, "No, it's as if he has withdrawn from the village. Though knowing him, he's probably hiding somewhere to make a move. Be careful after this round is over. He might try to assassinate you." Fujin nodded and replied, "Don't worry, I'm always on my guard." He muttered softly, "It might be interesting if he attacks my house. Even though I have applied a lot of seals, I've never tested it." Hiruzen's clone's eyes twitched on hearing his words. He thought, even though Orochimaru is reckless, he isn't that reckless to attack that messed up house. Heck, even at my peak, I wouldn't attack that house. The seals on his house are so dense that if I try to observe the seals, I am not even able to see the outer walls with my naked eyes. As for looking through the walls, it has long entered the realms of impossibility. I can't even find the seals that are responsible for defense. Hiruzen almost wanted to ask Fujin to inscribe seals on the village walls. However, he concluded that he loved his kidneys more and decided against it. Of course, the main reason was that no one would be able to make sense of the seals in Fujin's absence. Hiruzen's clone said, "That might be interesting, though I don't think he would. Anyway, meet up with others." He dispelled himself. Fujin chuckled and disappeared as well. The genins had all been gathered and all the Jounin sensei, examiners, and proctors were present as well, one of whom caught Fujin's eye. Fujin glanced at Orochimaru and thought, he still dared to show up. No, his chakra is rather low. Though he could have hidden it, he's most likely a shadow clone. Even if he is the main body, there isn't any benefit in exposing and fighting him here. Kakashi noticed Fujin's gaze and asked softly, "Is something the matter?" Fujin replied softly, "Something about the Oto Jounin feels off, though I can't put a finger on what it exactly is." Kakashi was surprised. He looked at Orochimaru and said in the same soft voice, "Without any proof, acting here will cause some diplomatic issues. We'll keep an eye on him after the exam is over." Fujin nodded. Orochimaru felt their gaze and looked at them, but neither Fujin nor Kakashi reacted. He thought, "Interesting. My disguise is good enough that even Sensei didn't recognize me, and yet he is looking at me suspiciously. Did his instincts warn him about me?" Anko took over Fujin's role and started speaking. After her, Hiruzen explained to the genins the significance of the Chunin exams and why they should do their best to earn glory for their respective villages. After a long speech, Hayate took over after him and informed them that a preliminary round would be conducted to select the genins who'd participate in the final round. He asked who would like to quit before the preliminaries began. As in the original story, Kabuto raised his hand. However, there was one particular difference. Unlike in the original story, he didn't heal himself after reaching the tower. His injuries made him appear in a terrible shape, and hence no one suspected him for withdrawing. Hayate explained how the matchups would be decided and started the electronic scoreboard. The first matchup was Uchiha Sasuke vs Akado Yoroi. As the genins dispersed to give the two of them space, Kakashi walked behind Sasuke and warned him to not use the Sharingan. He informed him that the match would be suspended if the cursed seal began spreading. Leaning against the wall, Fujin thought, "It's been such a long time. To think that I'd enter this world and be witnessing these battles in person." He glanced at all the genins and thought, then again, not much should change. I have only had a major impact on Naruto and his teammates. Other than them, I should have very minor effects on Guy's students and Gaara. The results of these battles shouldn't be too different. Sasuke should have it a bit easier in this battle since his physique is much stronger due to Kakashi's torture, though he might still need to copy Lee's technique. After all, fighting without using Sharingan and chakra without any prior training isn't easy. As Fujin expected, Sasuke struggled initially due to Yoroi's chakra-absorbing technique. However, he was able to knock him out easily after he used Lee's technique. Seeing Yoroi lying on the ground, Fujin thought, I nearly forgot about this guy's technique. Absorbing chakra. That is a rather handy technique. Though he is far inferior to Nagato and Kasama in this regard, Fujin thought for a bit. A smile appeared on his face as he decided, I want that technique. Yoroi, who was lying unconscious, had no idea the calamity he attracted due to his unique skill. If he did, he would regret trying to use that platform to make an impression on Orochimaru. The next couple of battles didn't have any surprises as Shino and Kankuro won their respective battles with relative ease. It was the fourth match, perhaps the most boring fight in the entire Chunin exams, which attracted Fujin's attention. There was one major change. Be it taijutsu or chakra control, Sakura had a decisive advantage over Ino. Unlike the original story where they fought equally for over 10 minutes, Ino's situation became bad in just a couple of minutes. Fujin looked at the two girls and thought, as I expected, Ino hasn't begun training seriously yet. Unlike her, Sakura has been trying to chase after Naruto and Sasuke. Though unsuccessful, it is a good motivator. Of course, the main reason for this change is Kakashi putting her through hell due to Naruto following my advice. Fujin wasn't too surprised by this change. What surprised him was when Sakura resisted Ino's mind transfer jutsu. Fujin's eyes began glowing as he concentrated chakra in them and observed Sakura. He realized, so that's how it is. No wonder Tsunade accepted her as her student so easily. This girl, not only is her chakra control good, but she is also a natural at yin and yang release. That's the three most crucial basics for any medical ninja. It is only due to her talent at yin and yang release that she could resist and overcome her mind transfer jutsu. Of course, the main reason is that Ino isn't strong enough. Chapter 634, The Butterfly Effect. To everyone's shock, Sakura was able to break Ino's mind transfer jutsu and force Ino out of her body. Everyone was surprised for a variety of reasons. Fujin couldn't help but look at Kakashi and wonder if her talent at yin and yang release is so good, why did he never teach her anything related to it? From what I recall, he did know that she had the potential to learn genjutsu, but apart from how to break it, Sakura didn't know any genjutsu. Fujin couldn't make any sense of Kakashi's training plan to his students. If not for the fact that Fujin pushed Naruto to bother him, he wouldn't have put them through intense physical training either. The only saving grace for Kakashi was that he had his students for less than a year, following which he didn't have much opportunity to train them as they found new teachers. However, a year was still a very long time. When compared to the methodological training of Renjiro, Kakashi lacked quite a bit. Fujin's gaze turned back to Sakura and Ino. Both were very low on chakra due to their mental battle. Both girls ran at each other at full speed and punched each other with all their might. Their punches landed on each other's cheeks, sending both girls flying as they crashed into the ground. After a few seconds of lying, both Sakura and Ino tried their best to get up. Ino barely managed to raise her upper body but soon collapsed and passed out. However, Sakura was able to get up though she remained seated on the floor. Her breathing was extremely erratic as she muttered, "Did I win? I beat Ino." Having grown up looking up to Ino, Sakura was in disbelief about finally winning against her. Naruto immediately began cheering loudly. Every ninja looked at Sakura admirably for her hard-fought victory. Well, nearly everyone. There was one exception. Even though there was no change on his face, Fujin's mood wasn't good. He nearly blurted out "uh-oh" when he saw Sakura staying up. Fujin thought, "Ugh, this is my fault. Sakura's physique is much better due to the torture Kakashi put them through. That's why she won that exchange. Shit, this victory could have a lot of impact. Now there will be 10 finalists instead of 9. Due to Sakura, the matchups could change. The finals were decisive moments for several important characters. be it Neji finding the right path due to his loss against Naruto or Temari and Shikamaru's battle. While I don't particularly care if Neji keeps believing in bullshit fate, if Shikamaru doesn't become a Chunin, it'll have an impact later. Of course, the biggest issue is Gaara and Sasuke's match. If that matchup doesn't occur, then Gaara wouldn't get injured and lose control over himself. It would mean that Shukaku would break loose in the middle of the stadium. That would change too many things. The biggest change could be that Naruto might not get an opportunity to use the invincible talk no jutsu. The next match between Temari and Tenten began. However, Fujin paid no attention to that battle. Instead, his mind was calculating dozens of possible scenarios simultaneously. Temari won her battle, and Shikamaru and Kin began their fight. Fujin let out a long breath and thought, if Sasuke and Gaara don't end up fighting, then the future will change too much. I can handle Shukaku, but Gaara won't turn over a new leaf without Naruto's influence. That would mean that he wouldn't become the fifth Kazekage, and would stay as a bloodthirsty killing machine. In that case, Fujin glanced at Gaara and decided, if that's the case, then there's no advantage in letting him live. I'll extract Shukaku from his body and seal him within myself. Even though that would attract Akatsuki towards me, I'm not afraid. If they send their weaker members, I'll just kill them. If Obito or Nagato show up, I might still have some chances of killing them if I get lucky. Even if Obito and Nagato attack me simultaneously, I can easily escape. Heck, even if Madara is revived, he can't stop me from escaping since I've no intention of sacrificing myself like Tobirama or Minato. So, there is no disadvantage in sealing Shukaku in me. On the contrary, the advantages are so good that I am tempted to do it even if Sasuke and Gaara are paired against each other. Fujin was tempted to make a move against Gaara during the invasion. However, he controlled himself. A small move he made against Kakashi to entertain himself resulted in so many complications. Something as major as Gaara's death would have far-reaching consequences in the future. Fujin wanted to be sure that none of those consequences would end up biting his ass before he made any move. Thankfully, there was a month for him to consider everything. Shikamaru won the match against Kin, and Naruto and Kiba faced off against each other in the 7th match of the day. Fujin stopped worrying about the things he couldn't control and paid attention to the two genins with some interest. He thought, now this should be interesting. He is much stronger now. Will he defeat Kiba with his own strength or will he fight his way to the finals? Hayate announced, well then, begin. Kiba immediately crouched down and used the ninja art of beast mimicry, 4 legs technique. Displaying incredible speed, he reached Naruto and elbowed him, sending him flying. He crashed into the ground and didn't get up. Nearly everyone present expected such a scene. Kakashi and Sakura looked at each other and smiled. Meanwhile, Fujin watched with a deadpan expression. Unlike the rest, he was speechless. He barely managed to resist the urge to facepalm himself. He cursed internally, this dumb brat. He took that hit intentionally. He didn't even try to dodge or block the hit. Shit, what has he been learning? Couldn't he take 1% of his sensei's shamelessness? That bastard is always 3 hours late and always shows up while carrying porn in his hands. To say Fujin was disappointed was an understatement. Even though he didn't accept Naruto as his student, he guided him quite a bit. Even though he hadn't attempted to change Naruto's original personality, he didn't expect to see him doing something so foolish. Fujin muttered to himself, looks like I haven't made him suffer enough. I have to do something to ensure that he doesn't do anything like this again. Naruto, who had just gotten up, suddenly shivered. He wondered, what the hell was that? Why do I feel like someone wants to put me through hell? Is it Kiba? No, his punch wasn't strong enough. The excitement he was feeling about taking that punch like a champion died down due to that unexpected feeling. Even so, he didn't shy away from boasting and taunting Kiba. Fujin watched as Kiba stopped underestimating Naruto and attacked him with Akamaru. Just like in the original story, he fell to Naruto's transformation jutsu and shadow clone jutsu combination, and ended up being bitten by Naruto. His performance ended up surprising everyone who knew about him earlier but hadn't caught up on his progress. Everyone began looking at him in a new light. Quite a few wondered what Kakashi had done to make him so good. However, what would have they thought if they knew Fujin's thoughts about Kakashi's teachings? Kiba finally became serious. He fed Akamaru a soldier pill and ate one himself as well. Akamaru dispelled Naruto's clone and rushed towards Kiba, who crouched down and said, "Let's do it, Akamaru, ninja art of beast mimicry. Woof woof." Man-beast clone Akamaru transformed into Kiba and both looked at Naruto with a feral look. Naruto immediately complained, "The look in his eyes is freaking me out. Hey, isn't this considered doping? Is this allowed?" Hayate replied, "It's permitted. The soldier pills are just like other ninja tools. You are no help, you always say that." Naruto shouted at Hayate. Kiba immediately went on the assault and used the four legs technique once again. Both he and Akamaru attacked Naruto at high speeds. Luckily, Naruto wasn't as slow as his canon counterpart and managed to barely dodge their attacks each time. Naruto thought, "Shit, he's very fast. I don't have any time to counterattack." He quickly dodged another attack while thinking, "Even if I could, I can't identify which one of them is Kiba. If I counterattack Akamaru but get hit by Kiba, I'll lose. I need to do something." Naruto dodged another couple of attacks and began weaving hand signs. Kiba immediately saw it and thought, "Which jutsu is he using? No matter, I won't let him use it." He immediately went on the offensive. At the same time, Akamaru attacked from the opposite side, leaving Naruto no space to dodge. Naruto immediately gathered chakra under his feet and jumped high above to dodge their attacks. However, Kiba grinned and thought, "There's my chance." He shouted, "Take this, Man-Beast Ultimate Taijutsu, Fang over Fang." Kiba and Akamaru both rotated their bodies at high speeds and moved towards Naruto, who couldn't dodge them in the air. Naruto immediately thought in panic, "They are in the position I wanted, but what the hell is this?" He completed his hand seals and took a deep breath. Wind Release, Great Breakthrough Jutsu Chapter 635, Earning Respect. Wind Release, Great Breakthrough Jutsu. Naruto immediately blew an intense wind current at Kiba and Akamaru. He thought, "I wanted to blow both of them away and win in one shot, but their rotation could create an issue. I need to keep blowing intense winds until they are blown away. Otherwise, it'll be painful." At the same time, Kiba wondered in shock, "What the hell is this?" The Great Breakthrough Jutsu hit Kiba and Akamaru and put immense pressure on both of them. However, since they were rotating at high speeds, they weren't blown away and continued to move towards Naruto. Even so, none of them were relaxed as their linear and rotational speeds were both decreasing rapidly. Kiba wasn't the only one who was shocked. Ino shouted, "What the hell is that? Since when could Naruto do that?" Shikamaru exclaimed, "That's the Wind Release, Great Breakthrough Jutsu. No way has he improved so much." Naruto-kun, a smile appeared on Hinata's face as she looked at Naruto's cool new jutsu. Lee exclaimed, "Impressive, Naruto," Kankuro said. "I underestimated him. His wind jutsu is almost as intense as yours, Temari." Temari frowned on hearing his words. Gaara, Dasu, and Neji watched intently as well. None of them expected Naruto to use such a strong jutsu. With no other choice, Kiba and Akamaru continued drilling through the intense winds until they were only a foot away from Naruto. Unfortunately, the intense winds from the Great Breakthrough Jutsu finally prevented them from moving any further. Both Kiba and Akamaru were launched back at great speed. Akamaru crashed into a wall and was knocked out. Kiba crashed into the ground and barely managed to land safely, even though he skidded along the ground for a few meters. To make matters worse, the sharp winds created several cuts on his body, with his arms and legs taking the most damage. He began losing blood very rapidly. Naruto finally stopped blowing air and took a deep breath as he landed on the ground as well. Seeing that Akamaru was knocked out and Kiba was in terrible shape, there was no more suspense in the match. Kurenai's expression became dark as she thought, "No way. I thought that Naruto was a total dunce. His academic record was terrible. How did he improve so much in less than a year?" When the match started, Kurenai was as confident as Kiba in his victory. However, Naruto repeatedly proved her wrong. She couldn't help but look at Kakashi. Most of the other jounins in the room did so as well. Naruto was just too famous, be it for his legendary pranks or his Jinchuriki status. None of them ever expected such a turnaround in the boy. It caused everyone to respect the boy. The silence in the hall was finally broken when Sakura loudly cheered. "Great job, Naruto, go get him. Finish the match with another great breakthrough jutsu." Kiba got back on his feet. He wiped the blood from his lips and analyzed. "He caught me and Akamaru off guard by that wind jutsu. Just like how we were waiting for him to jump up, he wanted us to jump as well so that we wouldn't be able to defend or dodge. Thankfully, the rotation saved us, and I was lucky to not be slammed into a wall like Akamaru. Still, how do I win this battle?" He quickly formulated a plan. "I still have the advantage of speed. I won't allow Naruto to use this jutsu again. I will interrupt him and knock him out with the four legs technique, and I need to do it quickly. Otherwise, the blood loss from my cuts will affect my speed. Whether I win or lose will be decided in the next couple of minutes," Naruto loudly said. "Of course." He quickly began weaving hand seals. However, at that very moment, Kiba launched several shurikens at Naruto, forcing him to dodge repeatedly. Kiba used that time to use the four legs technique and quickly shortened the distance between the two. He appeared behind Naruto and said, "Too late." Even though he was dodging the shurikens, Naruto's eyes never lost track of Kiba. As Kiba attacked him from the rear, he launched a kick at him without even turning around. Kiba didn't expect such a counterattack and couldn't dodge in time. The kick landed on his chest and sent him flying away. Kiba coughed blood but managed to flip in the air and landed on his feet. Naruto looked at him and said, "I told you that I only got hit because I wanted to test your strength. Don't think that I am slower than you. It's the opposite, believe it." Unlike in the original story, where Kiba comfortably outsped Naruto, the difference in their speed wasn't very significant due to the training Kakashi put Naruto through. Kakashi analyzed, "No, it's not just about the speed. Under normal circumstances, Kiba wouldn't be hit by that kick. However, he was very distracted as he desperately wanted to win with that attack." Kurenai also analyzed, in addition to his desperation, Naruto's counterattack and speed caught him off guard, making him unable to defend or dodge. Just what the hell did Kakashi do with Naruto? "How did he improve so much?" Shino calmly said. "Not only does he have a strong wind jutsu, but he is also at the same level as Kiba in terms of taijutsu." Standing next to him, Hinata thought, "Naruto-kun. Everyone is finally acknowledging you." Ino couldn't help but look at Shikamaru and ask, "Are you sure that he is Naruto? Is someone disguised as him using the transformation jutsu?" Shikamaru didn't reply. He was speechless by Naruto's development as well. Naruto said, "Since you don't want to be hit by my great breakthrough, I'll try out the new killer move that I've been practicing." Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 4 clones appeared next to Naruto. He copied Sasuke's Lion Barrage and renamed it Uzumaki Naruto Barrage. With his injuries and tiredness, Kiba couldn't handle the assault and was pummeled until he could no longer get up. Fujin nodded and thought, well, other than the initial cockiness, he fought well. That said, he didn't try to abuse his shadow clones or his massive chakra. There's a lot of scope for improvement. Hayate checked Kiba and announced Naruto as the winner of the battle. Among cheers from a few of his fellow genins, Naruto returned back to the viewing area while Kiba was carried away on a stretcher. The next battle was a fight between the two Hyugas. Their battle was identical to the canon fight. Seeing Neji hitting the chakra points on Hinata's arm, Hoka said softly, "That's Neji. He is probably the greatest genius in the entire history of the Hyuga clan." Standing next to him, Renjiro nodded. Fujin, who was standing in front of them, said, I have seen him a few times earlier, though this is the first time I have seen him fight. I have to say." Fujin paused for a bit as Neji gave a speech about genius and failures. He continued, Fujin paused for a bit as Neji gave a speech about genius and failures. He continued, "I'm disappointed." Both Hoka and Renjiro were surprised by Fujin's words. Kakashi, Guy and their students heard his words and looked at him as well. Neji's incredible talent was visible to the naked eye. Yet Fujin said that he was disappointed. Lee asked, "What do you mean, Fujin-san?" Hoka added, "What disappointed you? In terms of talent, he is head and shoulders above me." Fujin watched as Hinata got back to her feet once again and said, "True, he has talent. However, what use is that talent when he has constrained himself by imaginary chains of fate? He thinks too highly of himself and too little of the ones who weren't born geniuses. With such a mentality, he'll find it hard to progress. Perhaps he might become a jounin. However, I don't see him progressing any farther beyond that rank unless he improves his mindset." Hoka frowned on hearing Fujin's words. As someone who had the bird cage, he knew how horrible the feeling of someone else controlling your life was. In fact, he had even talked about Fujin regarding the same. He also knew how Hisashi was sacrificed to save Hayashi, so he could understand why Neji developed such a mindset. Naruto heard his words as well and said, "That's right. Who is he to say that a failure will never improve? Hang in there, Hinata." Hoka ignored Naruto and said, "Even though his words are harsh and misguided, that doesn't mean that his future progress would be restricted. Besides, his words are having a mental impact on his opponent." "That's not much different from your trash talk," Fujin replied. "If he did it just to get under her skin, I would have been impressed. Unfortunately, he believes every word he says. Besides, his words aren't the issue. The issue is how narrow his view is." Hoka became confused and asked, "What do you mean?" Sakura, Naruto, and Lee were confused as well. Unlike them, Kakashi, Guy, and Renjiro understood what Fujin was implying. Fujin chuckled and answered with a question. How exactly can he maintain such beliefs after being his student for nearly 2 years? Chapter 636, Fate. Immediately, all of them looked at Guy. Lee asked in confusion, "What do you mean? What's wrong with Guy-sensei?" Hoka, Naruto, and Sakura didn't understand either. Fujin answered, "Guy's talent was so bad that his admission to the academy was rejected initially." The information surprised Hoka and the Genins. Lee wasn't aware of that particular information either. Even though Guy had told him that he was a failure as well, he didn't entirely believe him and felt that he was only saying so to make him feel better and motivate him. Naruto thought, no way. How was someone as strong as him rejected by the academy? Seeing everyone staring at him, Guy displayed his trademark smile and gave a thumbs up. He said, "That's right, I wasn't accepted initially. However, I didn't think you'd know about this, Fujin." Fujin chuckled in response and continued, "By comparison, Orochimaru was the most talented student of his batch and perhaps his generation. He became a genin when he was 6 years old and was trained by Lord Third since then. And yet today, I would rather have Orochimaru as my enemy than him. Even after having such a sensei, if he can't see this simple reality, then his future prospects are just hopeless no matter how talented he is." Immediately, the eyes of everyone other than the elite Jounins widened. Hoka looked at Guy in shock and thought, is Fujin implying that Guy is stronger than Orochimaru? No, he is saying that Guy is considerably stronger than Orochimaru. Is he for real? Even Naruto looked at him in shock and thought, wait. Fujin said that he might have not won against Orochimaru if they fought in neutral territory. And Sasuke said that Orochimaru is likely far stronger than Kakashi-sensei and Zabuza. And yet, Fujin said that he would rather fight Orochimaru than Guy-sensei. Does that mean that Bushier Brows-sensei is stronger than both Kakashi-sensei and Big Brother Fujin? Holy crap! How strong is he? Sakura felt the same as well. She recalled the horrifying chakra emitted by both Orochimaru and Fujin and thought, Is Guy-sensei so strong that he can defeat Orochimaru? Fujin continued, considering his upbringing, I can understand his emotions and thought process. I wouldn't have said what I did if he was still in the academy. However, since he is still stuck on those beliefs despite training under Guy for a couple of years, it shows that he has a very narrow mindset. If he doesn't change it, it will become his bane. Hoka was surprised by Fujin's words. As he analyzed them, he couldn't help but see things from his perspective and felt that Fujin wasn't wrong. He thought, even though Fujin said those words, his words could also be implied as if Neji changes his mindset in the future, then he might become very strong. So it depends on Neji. Fujin's words had more impact on someone other than Hoka. Lee fell into deep thought. He had gone through the entire academy without any talent. He was then placed on the same team as Neji, who frequently talked about fate and repeatedly said that a failure will always stay a failure. Every time he lost to Neji, Tenten repeated Neji's words and said that he wouldn't be able to defeat Neji since Neji was a genius. Of course, Lee later found his confidence due to Guy's training and the 8 inner gates technique. However, those words always stayed in his mind as he hadn't defeated Neji yet because Guy didn't allow him to use the forbidden technique. He asked, Fujin-san, what are your views about fate? Fujin looked at him and asked in return, Fate, what of it? Lee asked, do you think that fate exists? If so, can we change our fate? Fujin thought for a bit and said, fate? That's rather controversial. Perhaps it does exist and everything that happens is fated. Or perhaps there's no such thing as fate and humans only blame it to avoid facing their shortcomings. I don't think anyone can say whether it exists for sure. Fujin's answer surprised the ones around him. Lee thought, we blame fate to avoid facing our shortcomings. Is that what I did? Isn't that exactly what Neji is doing since he can't do anything about his bird seal? Renjiro thought, impressive answer. People who believe in fate blame it every time something goes against them, or they might compare themselves with someone who's born in luxury and blame their fate instead of working hard and exceeding them. Kakashi and Guy thought the same as well. Unlike them, Naruto didn't bother thinking so deeply and said, if those are the 2 possibilities, then I will believe that fate doesn't exist. Lee nodded. However, to his and Naruto's surprise, Fujin chuckled and asked, even if it exists, what of it? Naruto asked. What do you mean? Fujin asked again. Even if fate exists, what would change? Why is it bad for you? Lee answered. If fate exists, then wouldn't it mean that a failure will always remain a failure? No matter how much we train, we'll never be able to surpass the geniuses. Naruto's eyes suddenly widened and he said, wait a minute, I understand. Are you saying that we can just change our fate if we don't have the talent? Lee's eyes widened as well. He felt that Naruto's words were sensible. He said, that's right. Even if I am fated to be weak, I will train hard and change my fate. Fujin chuckled again and asked, if fate can be changed so easily, can it really be called fate? Fujin's question stumped everyone around him, including Kakashi and Renjiro, once again. Kakashi directly asked, what are you implying? Fujin answered, you are looking at it the wrong way. Who said that failures are destined to be failures? Why can't someone's fate be that they would start without any talent and reach the top through sheer hard work? Look at Guy, for instance. If fate exists, it would simply mean that he was fated to rise to the top through hard work, despite not having any talent at the start. If it doesn't, then he simply trained hard and proved everyone's opinion wrong. The same is also applicable for any others who feel like they aren't as talented as the supposed geniuses. That's why I said that there is no reason to be worried about fate. Instead of feeling sorry for yourself and quitting, just give it your all and train until you achieve your goals. Even if you're born a genius, you'll never amount to much without hard work. Fujin's words made everyone think. Sakura thought, that's right, our fates can be like that as well. After all, who said that a failure can't grow strong? We have a live example of Guy-sensei in front of us. Kakashi analyzed Fujin's words and discovered a slight inconsistency in them. While he didn't particularly care about fate, he was interested in knowing more about Fujin. He asked, "Good answer, but what if someone is fated to be weak? Wouldn't that be unfair to them? What would be the point of them training hard if they are fated to stay weak? Should they just give up?" Fujin answered. "Perhaps, but how would they know that they are fated to stay weak? It's not like everyone is given a fate certificate at birth to tell them what they can and cannot achieve in their life, right?" Renjiro chuckled and said, "That's right. How would anyone know what their fate is?" Fujin nodded and said, "Yeah, and this is under the assumption that fate exists, which is again something we can't say with certainty. So there is no point in staying stuck on it. Even if fate exists, no one knows what your fate is. Just live to your fullest extent, and don't fall short on your efforts so that you don't have any regrets." Naruto, Sakura and Lee smiled confidently on hearing that. Even though the three genins would grow to be extremely strong in the future and be famous throughout the world, all of them still had several insecurities. Fujin's words provided them with a lot of confidence. Hoka involuntarily nodded as well, while Renjiro, Kakashi and Guy smiled seeing their students gaining confidence. Fujin's eyes were still on the fight as he muttered, "Besides, there are so many more scary things in this world. For instance, no matter how much you train, what you do, how strong you get, and how many goals you achieve, you'll eventually die in a few decades. Compared to the inevitability of death, fate is rather cute." Immediately sweat appeared on Renjiro, Guy, and Kakashi. They wondered, is he motivating them or demotivating them? Chapter 637, Medical Ninjutsu. Compared to the inevitability of death, fate is rather cute. Hearing Fujin's words, the genins became quiet. A few seconds later, Lee's shoulders dropped. In a depressing tone, he said, "That's right. No matter what we do, we won't be able to escape death." Naruto added sadly, "Yeah, even if I become the Hokage, I'll eventually die." Sakura thought, "I never thought of it. Someday I'll be separated from my Sasuke, and there's nothing I can do to stop it." Seeing their depressed students, Kakashi and Guy panicked. Guy placed his hand on Lee's shoulder and said, "Don't worry about that now, Lee. You are still young. Now is the time to enjoy your youth and not worry about old age." Kakashi immediately followed up, "That's right. Instead of worrying about dying due to old age, you should focus on getting strong so that no one can kill you before that. You don't want to end up regretting not fulfilling your dreams just because of this, right?" Hearing their words, Lee, Naruto, and Sakura snapped out of their thoughts. Lee said, "Ah, that's right. My flames of youth are still burning." Sakura thought, "That's right. I'm still just a young girl. Why am I getting worried about my old age?" Even Naruto realized the same. Fujin said without taking his eyes off the fight, "What are you guys getting so depressed about? I just meant that just because you'll eventually die doesn't mean that you'll commit suicide today, right? In the same way, stop worrying about fate. Look at Hinata fighting despite knowing that she'll lose while you three are getting depressed about something that'll happen decades from now." Fujin's words immediately made them feel embarrassed. At the same time, they felt better about their future. Even though their paths wouldn't be easy, they felt better, knowing that at least there was a path in front of them. "But you're wrong, Cousin Neji. I can see it now that even more than me, it's you who are torn and suffering, caught between the main and branch families of our clan." Hinata replied to Neji's never-ending taunts. Her words caused Neji to lose control of himself. He rushed at Hinata, fully intending to kill her. Fortunately, the Jounins took action. Guy appeared behind him and grabbed him. Kakashi grabbed his arm. Hayate appeared in front of him and was ready to knock him out if he continued, while Kurenai would have knocked out his legs had he continued. Neji said, "Well, why are the other Jounins getting involved? Special protection for the main family, eh?" Guy immediately said, "Enough, Neji. You swore that you wouldn't drag your issues with the main family here." As they were speaking, Hinata's heartbeat faltered. She immediately coughed out blood and dropped to her knees before lying on the ground. Naruto and Sakura immediately went to check on her. Seeing Naruto, she wondered as her eyes closed, "Naruto, I wonder if maybe I managed to change just a little bit." She fell unconscious. While Naruto was looking at her, Neji said, "Hey, you, Mr. Failure, a couple of words of advice. A true shinobi would have too much class to make a spectacle of themselves by cheering during a serious match. And one more thing, you may as well accept who you are. Once a failure, always a failure." Under normal circumstances, Naruto would have felt insecure by Neji's sentence even though he wouldn't show that openly. However, thanks to the talk he just had with Fujin, Naruto just felt that Neji was a giant idiot. However, he was still pissed about how Neji treated Hinata. He asked, "You want to try me?" Neji just chuckled in response. Naruto was about to charge at Neji when he heard, "Cool it, Naruto." Naruto was surprised and looked behind him to see Fujin standing there. He didn't sense Fujin's moment at all. Even Neji's smile disappeared as he hadn't seen Fujin's movements either. However, he wasn't too disturbed as he had seen Fujin do that thousands of times. However, one particular ninja had terror in his eyes, though he did well to hide it. Baki thought, "I didn't sense him move. It was as if he appeared out of thin air. He's fast, ridiculously fast." No, it wasn't entirely his speed. He moved when everyone was paying attention to those two kids. That's why I didn't feel his movements at all. However, this is even worse. If he's able to grasp such opportunities during battle, I'll have a very difficult time surviving against him. The news propagated by the Hokage wasn't false. He really might have defeated Orochimaru. I need to inform Lord Kazekage. No, I need to inform the entire council. We may need to call off this entire invasion. Otherwise, the consequences will be dire. No one noticed Baki's panic. Neji saw that Fujin was looking at him and became puzzled. He asked, "What is it?" Fujin casually replied, "A true shinobi may or may not cheer during a match, but they surely don't lose control of their emotions during a battle. One false step could mean your death on the battlefield. Keep it in mind the next time." Neji frowned on hearing Fujin's words but didn't argue back. After all, Fujin's words were true. Hinata's last sentence had made him lose all control. Had he been fighting a stronger opponent, he could have paid with his life. Suddenly, Hinata coughed a lot of blood despite being unconscious. Her face had become very pale. Kurenai immediately checked on her and thought grimly, "Oh no, she's going into ventricular fibrillation. He really intended to kill her." "Kurenai, move aside." Kurenai had just glanced towards Neji when she heard Fujin's words. She became confused and asked, "What is it?" "Hinata needs medical care immediately," Fujin replied. "That's why I asked you to move aside." Fujin extended his palm towards Hinata's chest and released yin chakra to check the state of her injuries. His action caught nearly everyone off guard. Many wondered, Fujin is a medical ninja. Since when? Kurenai, on the other hand, became a bit nervous and thought, is he good at medical ninjutsu? Hinata's condition is bad. She subconsciously glanced towards the medics, who noticed her gaze and moved towards her. However, none of them disturbed Fujin due to his reputation, and the fact that he was inspecting Hinata properly. Fujin inspected Hinata's injuries and thought, "Tusk, that guy was ruthless. No wonder she didn't recover from these injuries even after a month." He withdrew his yin chakra as he stopped inspecting Hinata. He used mystical palm jutsu and began healing her. The medics immediately became respectful on seeing that jutsu and thought, his technique is good. He inspected properly, and his healing technique is very powerful. As Fujin continued healing Hinata, the medics realized that none of them were as good as Fujin at healing. Hiruzen thought, not bad. Yoshi, Isamu and others did a good job. Even though Fujin drained them so much that I had to give every Jounin rank medical ninja in the hospital a couple of weeks of vacation. Having another excellent medical ninja is a good thing for Konoha. The fact that he's a rank S ninja and extremely powerful means that no one can neutralize him. However, since he is a fighter, I can't have him waste all his chakra on healing during a battle. He can only heal himself and perhaps elite Jounins in the heat of a battle. At the same time, Baki analyzed, he is a medical ninja as well. It should mean that he is decent with poisons as well. We can't count on killing him with poisons. Not to mention, if he has been guided by the legendary Sanin Tsunade, it could mean that Konoha has another ninja who can neutralize all our poisons on the battlefield. However, the chances of that should be low considering how young he is. Regardless, we will have to keep it in mind in the future. As Fujin continued healing Hinata, color appeared on her pale face. In around 3 minutes, Fujin healed all her internal injuries before opening up the chakra points Neji blocked. He finally got up and said, "She isn't in danger, but her internal injuries were quite serious. Keep her under observation and ensure that she doesn't do any strenuous activities for at least a couple of weeks. And of course, no fighting or practicing gentle fist for that period." The medics nodded and said, "All right, counselor, we'll take over from here." They quickly checked Hinata once again before carrying her away. Kurenai sighed in relief and said, "Thank you, Fujin." Fujin nodded and said, "It's no big deal." With Hinata taken away, the area was finally cleared and the electronic board began deciding the next matchup. It displayed Gaara v Takes Lee, Chapter 638, Fujin's Choice. Gaara v Takes Lee. As in the original story, Guy warned Lee about Gaara's gourd, though he didn't mention any details. Kakashi looked at Gaara and thought, so he is the fourth Kasuke's son, and also Suna's only Jinchuriki. This should be an interesting fight. Since Naruto was standing close to Fujin, Kankuro didn't dare to get close to him to get some information about Neji. The fact that Fujin was able to injure Gaara when he was only 13 was enough of a deterrent for Kankuro. As for Fujin, he was looking forward to the fight. He thought, even though there were several good fights in Naruto, if there was one that stood out, it would be this one. A shame that it was also the last time Lee was in the spotlight. If it wasn't for the fact that I have been in even more intense battles, I would have been even more excited to watch this in person. Let the 9th round battle begin. Lee went on the attack as soon as Hayate announced the start of the battle, but was blocked by the sand pouring out of Gaara's gourd and protecting him autonomously. Fujin looked at it and thought, "I didn't get time to have a closer look at him in the desert, but the sand in his gourd is quite intriguing." Unlike normal magnet release, the sand in his gourd works autonomously like it has its own mind. No, that wouldn't be correct. A better comparison would be a robot having a set of instructions to always follow. The technique his dying mother used to achieve this should undoubtedly be a kinjutsu that would cost the caster's life. If it can be used more liberally, then it can be used to create several powerful tools. Of course, Fujin wouldn't use that technique himself. However, he saw a lot of scope in it if given to his Phantom Haven Society members. Even if a small percentage of them could use that technique during their death, Fujin would gain several Jounin and Elite Jounin level members. He continued analyzing. The best case would be someone enchanting tools that can be used by me. However, I'll need to create a very strong personal bond with everyone to achieve that. It's not something that I can do from so far away. Also, spending that much time is probably not worth it, though I could send low chakra shadow clones. As he was analyzing, Guy asked Lee to remove his weights. While most considered it lame, everyone was shocked when Lee dropped those weights to the ground. When he attacked again, only a handful of people were able to see his movements and Gaara wasn't one of them. Fortunately for him, his sand could still protect him. Fujin thought, "Oh well, I'll think about it after I get my hands on that technique. I'll first need to get the Edo Tensei Jutsu. Hopefully, he'll know how to perform this jutsu. Once I learn it, I'll have to dig up his mother's grave and resurrect her." Fujin's mind fell silent for a bit as he thought, "Sigh, how far have I fallen? From someone who never killed to being comfortable with killing to working on dead bodies and now to digging up graves." Fujin stopped thinking about it. In his previous life, he would never have done something like this, be it for his morals or just the disgust about doing something like that. However, the ninja world slowly changed his morals and molded his personality to a point where such things became acceptable to him. Bushy Brows has gotten even faster. He really is strong, Naruto exclaimed in shock and surprise. Fujin said, "He is, At least in terms of strength, Lee is qualified to become a Chunin. Fujin said, he is. At least in terms of strength, Lee is qualified to become a Chunin. Watch this battle properly. They are the two strongest genins in this exam. A shame that they had to fight before the main exam. Neji frowned on Fujin's proclamation. Naruto exclaimed in surprise, "Wait, the two strongest? You mean that they are stronger than me and Sasuke?" Fujin chuckled and answered, "You two are still quite weak. You'll need to train very hard to even be able to compete with them. Even though you have grown stronger, Naruto, you'll need to train a lot more before you reach their level. Not to mention, there are ninjas who can defeat both of them together with ease. Always remember that when you train." Naruto solemnly nodded as Lee used the front lotus. Unfortunately, Gaara slipped and used substitution jutsu when Lee closed his eyes momentarily due to pain. Lee's body took a lot of damage due to using the technique, and he took a lot of beating until he could open the gate of healing. Fujin looked at Lee and thought, if this fight continues as usual, Lee will be injured badly. If everything happens as per the original story, then Hiruzen will die during the invasion, following which Kakashi will be left in a terrible shape by Itachi, while Jiraiya will put forth Tsunade's name for the 5th Hokage. She will return, and her hemophobia will be cured as well. I could then get her help to increase my cellular activity. She'll heal Lee and Kakashi, and everything will go back to normal. The only drawback is that I won't get to have fun with Hiruzen anymore. That would be a pity. However, all that is assuming things happen like they did. Fujin glanced towards Hiruzen and thought, I haven't seen Hiruzen go all out, but I always had a feeling that he is ridiculously stronger than what he was shown in the canon. His reputation is just too huge, and I don't think any of it is fake. Even if Orochimaru summons Hashirama and Tobirama, I am not sure whether the three of them could defeat Hiruzen. On the contrary, I have a feeling that Hiruzen might seal up the Senju brothers and kill Orochimaru without needing to rely on the dead demon-consuming seal. After all, Orochimaru's Edo Tensei summons don't have their peak power like how Kabuto's did. Not to mention, even if he did, Hashirama would just break out of his control. In fact, even Tobirama might be able to do it. So even if he could, Orochimaru wouldn't risk making either of them any stronger. If Hiruzen ends up winning, or even if he just holds them back until Jiraiya and I can reinforce him, then the entire future will change drastically. With him alive, Jiraiya won't go looking for Tsunade to become the next Hokage, and she won't return to the village. Without her, Lee's injuries can't be treated. Even though Guy is strong, he doesn't have the influence to make Hiruzen call Tsunade back. Even if he did, Hiruzen wouldn't call her back for that reason. After all, her hemophobia won't be cured if she doesn't meet Naruto, and those events don't occur. I might be able to get Hiruzen to call her to the village using my accomplishments during the war and get my cellular activity increased, but Lee's career as a ninja will most likely be over. Everyone watched in awe and shock as Lee made Gaara his punching bag after opening the 4th inner gate, Gate of Pain, as Gaara's sand could no longer keep up with Lee's incredible speed, and Gaara's sand armor crumbled. Fujin was the only one having different emotions as he wondered, should I let nature take its course and leave it to Lee's luck? Or should I make a move and end the fight early? As Fujin was deciding, Lee opened the 5th inner gate, Gate of Limit, and used Reverse Lotus and hit Gaara with all his strength. The impact of his palm and foot on Gaara's abdomen was so intense that high-speed winds and dust were launched in every direction. Most of the spectators immediately covered themselves up, while Fujin just continued watching the duo as the winds and dust avoided him. Guy's and Kakashi's eyes widened in shock as Gaara's gourd turned into sand and softened his fall. Even though he was hurt, this move ensured that he wouldn't get knocked out. Lee fell to the ground as well as his body was too tired and hurt from the backlash of opening 5 inner gates for so long. As the dust cleared, Lee saw Gaara lying in his sand and extending his arm towards him. He muttered in disbelief, "How can that be?" While everyone was still in shock from these developments and trying to process what had taken place, Gaara controlled his sand and moved it towards Lee. Due to the state of his body, he couldn't move properly and the sand reached his left arm and left leg. Chapter 639, Fujin's Strictness. While everyone was watching in shock, Gaara controlled his sand and moved it towards Lee. Due to the state of his body, he couldn't move properly and the sand reached his left arm and left leg. As the only one who had seen that move in action, Shino thought, "It's that move." Lee tried getting away, but the sand crawled up his fist and foot and continued moving upward. He didn't have the energy to free himself. Seeing that he had encased enough of his arm and leg, Gaara was about to clench his fist. However, at that very moment, a wind blade suddenly cut through the sand that was holding Lee down. The winds accompanying it sent the sand around his limbs flying as well without leaving a single scratch on him. Lee, who was trying to pull away from the sand, suddenly lost his balance as nothing was holding him anymore and tumbled forward. The sudden change once again shocked everyone. Even Gaara's eyes widened as everyone stared at Fujin. Fujin wasn't bothered by their stares and calmly said softly, "The battle is over. Gaara of Sunagakure is the winner." At the same time, Fujin thought, screw it. It doesn't have any impact on me whether Lee gets injured and then healed or never gets injured in the first place. What could affect the future is if he has to stop being a ninja and Guy's team either breaks up or he has to take another teammate. However, if Hiruzen survives, all talk of the future is meaningless anyway. Regardless, it will be a pity if someone like Lee can't continue being a ninja. Not to mention, I did benefit a lot from Guy. And unlike Hiruzen, he never tried to get anything in return except a good spar. I suppose I owe him this much. Baki became serious and looked at Fujin. He wondered, why did he make a move? I need to ensure that he doesn't make a move against Gaara. Even though his sand will protect Gaara for a while, he can't be allowed to lose control yet. Otherwise, Konoha would eat him alive. Even Hiruzen wondered, why did Fujin make a move? That's not like him. Kakashi and Guy were surprised as well and weren't sure what to say. Neither of them expected that Fujin would make a move. Of course, the one who was the most stunned was none other than Rock Lee. Not only had Fujin involved himself in the battle, but he had also declared that Gaara was the winner. Even before he could stand on his legs, he said, "Wait, I haven't lost yet. I can still fight." Unlike Baki, Gaara didn't see the larger perspective. Instead, the memories of him getting injured a few years ago resurfaced in his mind. He recalled Baki and his father saying that Fujin was the one who injured him. Hence, instead of calming down, he became even more angry and sent a lot more sand towards Lee, intending to kill him for good. Fujin had just looked at Lee and was about to speak when Gaara controlled his sand and sent it towards Lee. The sand reached the area through which Fujin's wind blade had passed through and stopped moving. Gaara's eyes widened as he observed, "My sand stopped moving? No, there is a wind flow there. My sand is flying towards the wall instead of piercing through it. What is it?" Even Baki looked in shock and questioned, how can a wind blade continue moving for so long? And how can it affect Gaara's sand? It's almost like a barrier. Kakashi observed with his Sharingan, his control over the wind is remarkable. The wind is flowing in such a way that anything that enters it gets thrown back. That is why the sand particles can't move to the other side. Did he develop such a technique earlier, or did he come up with it to stop his sand technique? Needless to say, it was an application of Fujin's wind domain which he had applied on a very small scale to specifically counter Gaara's sand. Fujin turned his gaze towards Gaara and asked casually, "Oh, do you still want to fight?" Suddenly, Baki flickered in front of Gaara and said, "As you said, this battle is over. Gaara has won." Fujin dismissively replied, "Tell that to your student." Baki frowned and thought, that look in his eyes. It's as if he doesn't consider me a threat at all. Had it been before, Baki would have been offended. He had prepared himself to stop either Kakashi or Fujin during their assault. However, he understood that he wouldn't stand a chance against Fujin after learning that Fujin defeated Orochimaru. He looked behind and said, "Gara, you've won. Let's head back." At the same time, Lee stood up and said, "I can still fight." Fujin glanced at him and said plainly, "The match is over. You are in no shape to continue fighting. Go get healed by the medics." Instead of backing away, Lee continued arguing, "But I can still fight. I don't want to lose in this manner." Lee was extremely unwilling. Neji, Naruto, Sasuke, and even Sakura had qualified for the finals. He didn't want to be left behind, especially considering that he had opened 5 inner gates. Nearly everyone could understand Lee's unwillingness, though not everyone was pleased by his attitude. Despite his impressive performance, Hiruzen, Anko, and Ibiki involuntarily shook their heads. Guy said, "Lee, yo." However, Fujin cut him off and said, "This is just a match. Even though you win glory for your village, that is assuming you win. Once you have lost, it doesn't matter whether you lose without injuries or you die, it makes no difference for the village. Your body is in such bad shape that you are barely able to stand, let alone fight. That attack would have crippled you if not killed you outright. Yet, not only did you not give up, you're arguing about wanting to continue the fight. If you don't understand what is the best decision to take under such a simple situation, then, I'm sorry to say this but—" Fujin paused and looked at Lee strictly. Without mincing his words, he harshly said, "Then you aren't ready to accept the responsibilities of being a Chunin." Fujin's words left Lee shocked. He had never seen Fujin being strict. His words completely caught him off guard and he didn't know how to reply. The proctors subconsciously nodded at Fujin's words. None of them would have supported his promotion despite his incredible strength. A Chunin was responsible for leading squads and ensuring their safety. Irrespective of how strong someone was, they wouldn't be promoted if they didn't know how to lead a squad properly and make sound decisions. Guy frowned and wondered, why is Fujin being so harsh? At the same time, Kakashi thought, Fujin is right. Lee needed to hear this. Otherwise, he would suffer in the future. Sakura couldn't control her tongue and said, "Hey, isn't that too harsh?" Her mouth was covered by Naruto's hand, who whispered, "Shh, don't poke Fujin when he is like this." As someone who had been on the receiving end of Fujin's harmless experiments, Naruto knew exactly when not to annoy Fujin. Otherwise, the winds would become too chaotic and intense, or he would be sent flying across the village. Fujin ignored their antics and continued looking at Lee with a strict expression. Neither his words nor his expression left any room for discussion. Lee realized his mistake and said, "I apologize. I got too caught up in the battle." Fujin nodded and didn't say anything. After all, he wasn't Lee's sensei. Guy wasted no time in appearing next to Lee at a speed that once again shocked Baki. He hugged Lee and said, "Don't worry, Lee, you fought very well." Lee immediately broke out into tears and shouted, "I'm sorry, Guy-sensei." Guy became teary as well and said emotionally, "Lee, Guy-sensei, Lee, Guy-sensei, Lee." The two immediately hugged each other tightly with tears rolling down their faces. Somehow, a sunset appeared in their background as everyone watched the two ninjas with disbelief and disgust. Temari blushed due to that sight. Kankuro couldn't help but mutter, "How did Gaara get smacked around by a loser like him?" Sweat appeared on Baki's face as he wondered, what the hell is up with this village? Even Gaara was disturbed by that sight. He couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Ino shouted in disgust, "Yuwa, what are they doing?" Neji just closed his eyes and turned his head away in embarrassment. He wished that everyone would forget that he was on the same team as them. Even Kakashi felt the same as Sakura looked at him and asked, "Sensei, how did he become your rival?" Her question left him speechless. He thought, "He forcefully became my rival without my consent. There wasn't anything I could do." Finally, Guy sent Lee away along with the medics. Even though his injuries weren't life-threatening due to Fujin's action, his body suffered immense backlash due to opening the inner gates. He needed to be treated immediately. Chapter 640, the matchups for finals. After the medics took Lee away, Guy returned back to Fujin's side. A frown appeared on his face. He couldn't help but say, I know you mean well, Fujin, but why were you so strict? Even though he never said it, Lee does look up to you due to our frequent spars. Such words could affect his confidence. As Guy was speaking, the last match began. However, the ones around Fujin didn't pay much attention to it. They were more interested in hearing Fujin's reply. Fujin answered, "If you knew the technique he was using, you'd have done the same, Guy. The Jutsu Gara used to encase Lee's arm and leg is called Sand Coffin. The jutsu he was about to use is called Sand Burial. He uses the first jutsu to encase his opponents in sand and the second jutsu to crush them to death." Naruto and Sakura's eyes widened in horror. Of course, the one who was the most stunned was Guy. Fujin continued, "If I hadn't acted when I did, Lee would have lost his left arm and leg. No medical ninja currently in Konoha would have been able to heal them. I don't think that even someone like Lady Tsunade could fix wounds of that level. Such an injury would end any ninja's career, let alone someone like Lee who knows nothing but taijutsu. Even though my words would hurt his pride and confidence, it is far better than the cost he would have to pay otherwise." Guy became silent for a while. Naruto exclaimed in disbelief, "No way, that sand guy has such a deadly jutsu." Fujin didn't say anything, but his serious expression gave Naruto the answer he needed. Both he and Sakura wondered, how can we even defend from that? Finally, Guy said, "I was mistaken. I apologize, Fujin. Thank you for looking out for Lee." Fujin smiled and replied, "Don't worry about it, Guy. I'm sure you'd have done the same for me." Guy smiled and nodded, "Of course." Renjiro smiled on seeing his reaction and said, "You don't need to worry about Lee's confidence taking a hit. If a single loss were to demotivate him, then he would never amount to much. However, hearing his past and his struggle, I don't think that this loss will keep him down. Instead, it is an opportunity for him to become even stronger, not just in terms of fighting capabilities but also mentally." Guy nodded and said with a thumbs up, "Of course, such a loss will never keep Lee down." None of them paid any attention to Dasu defeating Choji. With all the preliminary battles done, all the winners were called down. Before going down to join the winners, Sakura inquired with Kakashi about Sasuke. Kakashi reassured her that he'd be fine and asked her to pay attention to the instructions before flickering away. Fujin looked at the place where Kakashi was standing and thought, "I forgot that he leaves before the matchups are decided." A frown appeared on his face. Renjiro noticed it and asked, "Is something the matter?" Fujin replied, "Just getting an odd feeling." Renjiro frowned. Fujin's instincts had generally proved right. Fujin said, "I'll leave as well. I'll keep a shadow clone behind to inform you if I need any assistance." Renjiro and Hoka nodded. After creating a shadow clone, Fujin left the tower as well. He activated his space-time sensing technique and chased after Kakashi while leaving enough distance between them for Kakashi to not realize that someone was trailing him. In the tower, Hiruzen explained the rules and details of the final round to the genins. In the end, Anko stepped forward with a box while Hiruzen said, "There are slips of paper in the box Anko is holding. Each one of you take one." Anko said, "I'll come around, so line up, okay?" Everyone took one paper slip each and opened it to see it. Naruto was the first one to see and thought, one. Hiruzen said, "All right, does everybody have one? Then, starting at the left, each one of you read the number written on your slip." Fujin's clone paid close attention. He thought, "This is it. The numbers will decide on what I should do." The genins looked at the paper slips and began telling their numbers. Dasu said, 10. Naruto said, 1. Sakura said, 4. Temari said, 8. Kankuro said, 7. Gaara said, 5. Shikamaru said, 9. Neji said, 2. Shino said, 6. As they spoke, Ibiki wrote down their names and said, "So Sasuke would be number 3. Hiruzen replied, "Good, now I will reveal the match order for the tournament-style finals." The genins were shocked to learn that they were deciding the order for the finals. Meanwhile, Fujin's clone thought, "Weird. Their number seems to be different due to Sakura. However, they are still close to their original opponents. It'll depend on how Ibiki decides the matchups would be. With Hiruzen's command, Ibiki showed the genins their matchups. Of course, the one who was watching the most intensely was Fujin's clone. As soon as his eyes lay on the paper, he thought, Shii. Wait, this is still salvageable. Since the number of participants wasn't a power of 2, a couple of extra matches were needed to reduce the number of participants to 8. Hence, the first 2 matchups were No. 4 Haruno Sakura Vitikes No 5 Gara and No 9 Dasu Kinuta Vitikes No 10 Nara Shikamaru. The winners of those matches would fight Uchiha Sasuke and Temari respectively in the next round. Following those 2 matches, the remaining would stay the same. That is, Naruto would first fight against Neji. The next match would be between Sasuke and the winner of Gara Vitikes Sakura, followed by Kankuro Vitikes Shino, and lastly Temari Vitikes, the winner of Shikamaru Vitikes Dasu matches. Fujin's clone analyzed, so the only additional fight is Sakura Vitikes Gara. Honestly, it doesn't make much difference whether she fights him or not. That match will be over promptly, and Gara will still end up fighting Sasuke, who may still end up coming late. Still, this is kind of weird. Fujin looked at the matchups with a strange look as he thought, even though only one person was added, it should have ended up changing the matchups completely. However, Sakura barely has had any effect on the matchups. I just talked about fate. Don't tell me that shit really exists. He sighed internally while concluding, oh well, screw it. This just might be a coincidence. Even if it does exist, I just have to follow my own words. Besides, considering that it allowed me to transmigrate to such a faraway and distinct place, a place that might not even be in the same universe or timeline, I doubt my fate would be bad. Perhaps it might just allow 10 tails to fall in my lap and make me the strongest in this world and later in this universe. Of course, he didn't ever plan on counting on things happening so easily considering how much he had to train and struggle to reach up to this time, but there was no harm in just thinking that for a few seconds. Elsewhere, Kakashi reached the place where Sasuke was kept under observation. Fujin reached there as well, but a frown appeared on his face as he wondered, why does it feel like someone is looking here? He focused on his space-time sensing technique and tried to locate everyone who could spy on that place. He immediately located one disturbance and looked in that direction. His eyes immediately widened as he thought, Orochimaru? Why the fuck is he here? Thoughts clashed in his brain at the speed of light as he recalled, wait, I remember. He was afraid that Kabuto would try to kill Sasuke or something along those lines. He won't make a move, or at least shouldn't unless he has decided to eliminate Kakashi to reduce obstacles for the invasion. Irrespective of whether he makes a move or not, I can't have him observe like this. Else, I wouldn't be able to do what I want. Orochimaru didn't sense Fujin's arrival or the fact that he had already been sensed. He continued looking with amusement and thought, so Kakashi is finally here. This should be interesting to watch. Orochimaru immediately looked behind and heard Fujin speaking. I didn't expect that you'd return so quickly. Were you so